All right. Well, Mage is here, so it's time to roll. I'll talk about all of One Piece.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Oh man, I just gotta fix this.
Fix
I always
what?
have a problem. Better now. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well,
Sweet.
it's finally happened. I'm fully caught up. I read 1098 this morning, which was just scanlated in the pirate edition, not officially out or officially translated. So we don't know. And even Oda didn't even finish it, which is like amazing for him. He usually, I don't think this has ever happened before. As what I've been reading is that he's never turned in
No.
an unfinished chapter. He like couldn't finish it in time. He ran up against a
Yeah.
deadline. It's amazing because it's like the first time I actually do it like here. It's like an unprecedented. Uh, like he couldn't do it. He was like he couldn't finish it.
Yeah, I do honestly suspect that it was like that partially it's like he got a little emotional with it in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty. We're in the middle. I mean, I don't know if we should start with the end right now, but we're in the middle of the background, the flashback telling the story of what's possibly the most interesting character in One Piece, Bartholomew Kuma, the revolutionary tyrant, the tyrant who carries a Bible with him and has been cloned by the world government and turned into a fleet of cyborgs. It's pretty amazing. I think as a metaphor, he's like representative of how Christianity is used, or at least how Oda sees it as being used, where there's this authentic center to it, which is hollowed out and taken control of by like the powers that be, the celestial dragons, as it were. Um, but man, I think we should start with like maybe the most basic stuff about One Piece, like why One Piece is so good, and kind of like its dominating metaphors, which is I think represented in Luffy's power, Monkey D. Luffy's power of elasticity, his rubbery power, which is usually opposed by some type of power that like splits or separates things most of the time.
Yeah. I can't think of really an example where it doesn't, other than maybe Katakuri.
There's a couple of examples where people have like a similar power in the sense of like I was thinking in on Whole Cake, like his major antagonist in that moment is the guy who has the mochi power, and it's like mochi versus
Yeah.
rubber and rubberiness, but those are always meant to be like sort of parallel, like sort of a shadow versions of himself where it's like him
The
having taken a different path or something.
yeah, the mirror match within the mirror.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
it's great.
There's so much you could spend an infinite amount of time talking about like how well organized it is. I've just been like even like and on rereading it, you start to see how much he's been holding on to. Like Oda, like how patient he is when it comes to revealing his whole bag of tricks that he's had from the very beginning. Because I think that there's like to really get into it, like the main character might not even be Luffy, but it's just the geography. It's like the world that he created. And Luffy is the thing that is just the vehicle through which he can tell a story about this whole world and like tie it all together into one piece, of course. But
Yeah.
the world that he created is such a such an organ. There's an SBS or like one of the intros in one of the volumes where he describes his writing process as being like playing Tetris, in that he has all of these ideas in his head, and writing is the process by which he like organizes them into like Tetris rows or whatever. So I often think, so I was thinking to extend that metaphor, it's like he's built up this like massive tower with like open spaces, like those like four line spaces on one side,
Hmm.
and as he's getting closer to the end of it, you just like clearing rows, clearing rows, clearing rows, and so it's like you get that's really the satisfaction of One Piece is you have all this tension built up from him stacking all of these pieces, and then like pieces like this where Kuma, who has been a character since like issue
Thriller bar.
since like even before that, he shows up in like Skypiea in like small moments when they're cutting to like the world government and like the seven warlords of the sea and things like that. He's like introduced just as like a face, you know, as like a character, but even then he's like holding like he has like his iconography, like all of the things that are kind of late fleshed out in his character are already latent there, and the things that are just revealed in this latest chapter are already like evident in like making sense of some things that seemed anomalous like in the earlier arcs, like especially regarding like Bonnie's treatment by like the Marines and things like this. Um,
Hmm.
so so I think that that's what's most amazing about it is that I think it's like he had the full idea fleshed out. He even said himself that he's had the ending planned from the very beginning. So I think that like he there, if you looked in his office somewhere, he probably has like a massive map, you know, a massive like kind of like filing cabinet of like the stuff that he's established and would like to establish in the future regarding this like world that he's managing. Um, and like that's really the appeal of it is that reading it it's like anything that's really well written in the sense that it feels like a holistic world that's being described as opposed to just like a small fragment of that world. You I guess you could say the story itself is a small fragment, but having over 1,000 chapters, you know, it doesn't seem like a small fragment, but that's how massive the world is implied to be um, through like secondary characters and like you know the history of the world and within the work itself. Like there's you can see like all these like parallel lines, like various characters going off and doing things, and how they will all sort of converge. So like even now, there's all of these things that were set up in like the first like 500 chapters, let's say, that still haven't really like paid off yet. And so like a lot of the appeal of like reading it week by week is seeing like these expectations, these these things that were set up a long time ago coming it like being finally paid off, like finally like the whole idea is like that it's setting it up from the beginning that it's like the journey has a definitive end. There is a definitive telos to the whole story. There is something that it is moving towards, and we're in the moment right now where it's like probably like the last quarter, last 20% even of this story. So
Yeah.
it's sort of like possibly the most exciting time to be reading it, because there is like well, but it's also frightening in the sense that it's like Oda could just die. That would be the worst thing in the whole world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's really incredible because like we just got out of Wano where it was this like very sealed, you know, I mean it was literally like the sealed off nation, and then like you exited and everything's exploding basically. Um,
I think that it's a
and
lot like that's how I felt about you like this is like it's sort of like mirrored sections. Like if you say that like the time skip represents like the 50% point of the journey and the
mhm.
story itself, that they're sort of like running parallels between them. Like you can even see like in Skypiea, for instance, the whole like MacGuffin, like the organizing, like tensions of it being like this sort of like eugenics, like fucking like here we're playing a game and like this is, and people are going to be exterminated slowly over this game or whatever as the antagonist. That happens with like even the net, like the cage, etc. That happens in
Yeah, the
like yeah, the
birdcage.
birdcage is already like presage. So it's sort of like you see the first 50% of it is kind of like a trial run for what the next 50% of it will be, but the next 50% of it is like sort of harsher or like stronger or like brought to a new pitch. Like it's just like raised the stakes because Wano isn't really that different from some of the other more closed off island stories that occur in the first half. It's just that it's much bigger. So it's sort of like this, like that's really what's so in it, like things just keep expanding in One Piece in the sense that what starts like when you first start reading it, or at least this is my experience, that like it's like oh yeah, this is like fun, this is nice, like you know I could get I get it, like you know I watch Dragon Ball Z, I understand like power scaling, etc. People always talk about that, but it's really more of like how much of a slow burn it is, like how much these tensions are raised like so like incrementally as opposed to what's usually what seems to like be a failure in other works that kind of work in the same way where it, like the stakes just are just raised too much too fast. The stakes are never really
Hmm.
raised that much until you get to about the 50% point, which is where it like takes on a tone of like much more seriousness in tone, I would say. Which is also then, but like Oda then in order to like balance off the increasing seriousness of the stakes at hand for everything in the story is also increasing like what you might call like the silliness factor, like the comic relief is brought to the same pitch because it's like Wano, as we were just talking about, it ends with the highest level of Luffy's power, right? But it's also like the
Yeah,
wackiest, most cartoonish fight sequence um,
in the whole
in the whole
series.
series. And then right after that is like the most brutal fucking sequence in the entire thing so far, which we're in the middle of right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole mirror structure is really beautiful. I think what like makes this arc really unique right now is that it doesn't have a perfect analog as much. Like a lot of people are saying it's like Sabaudi, and it kind of is, but like Sabaudi's been repeated in a way through the beginning of Wano.
I feel like it's closer
Um,
to like Punk Hazard, honestly, is like what the because it's
yeah,
like because you get the abandoned Vegapunk Island and now you're in like the inhabited Vegapunk Island and it's like that like Punk Hazard is like right before everything goes off to like the climax of the first half of the story, which is what I feel like we're in right now, where it's like right after Punk Hazard, right, is Dressrosa.
yeah, yeah.
So I feel
So
like
I
the
mean,
Elbaf will be like Dressrosa or something like that.
yeah, I'm really curious about that because Elbaf has to be sort of like dialectically related to Wano just because it's Loki instead of Odin.
Well, I mean, you can make parallels with like all of the different things because it's sort of like he's
Oh,
laying
of
pieces,
course.
like Tetris, kind of, where it's like to like say like the stacks are interlinked by these various different shapes. But but I think like if you're like I just mean in terms of like the pacing of it, it's clearly going to like we're like at the point right now where at least at my first read through, um, when you get like to like Water 7 and things start to really pick up. Um, like and kind of just keep accelerating until that like until it hits the time skip. I feel like that's like where we're at is like the where it's like going to start accelerating to its conclusion.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, it's like sort of an inverse, right? Like we just had Marineford, so it feels like we're having like a reverse structure where it's right after Marineford, we're going back to like Water 7 kind of thing. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like like every like science island in One Piece is always like wintry in a way.
yeah, yeah.
Um, it's he's really good with structuring like the seasonality of all of it in that sense.
It's
Um,
like the amount the structure is like very much like Phrygian in the sense of being tied to like seasons, weather, and the fours, like the number four.
mhm.
Being like the quaternities are always like representative of like wholeness. That's and like that's why there's like missing quaternities or like on like Germa is like is like a broken quaternity because Sanji isn't a part of it and things like that.
Yeah.
There, but like and like the whole world itself is like carved into four different seas, so it's like
Hmm.
this quaternity I think is the organizing like number or something you could say for the whole thing is because like basic like the main crew effectively is Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, and Nami are like the central four figures, and they're kind of balanced off of each other in terms of their affections or whatever, So it's like that's like, and those are like the first four that are established in the very beginning, and then the rest is sort of accumulating on top of that. But that's like the center of the story is these four figures because they have the most they have the most interesting backstories. Like Nami's backstory, I think, will probably be more deepened or complicated as this goes on. Like there's a lot of theories regarding that. But obviously, we just
Hmm.
saw like Zoro's was more complicated by Wano, and Sanji's was just more complicated by Whole Cake Island and whatnot. And I'm sure Luffy's will be complicated further as we like encounter more dragon content, which is what we're getting at
Yeah.
right now. Also, so I think that it's really like I can see the end in sight. Like it starts to
Yeah.
feel like inevitable. Like a lot of the things that are happening are just like, oh, this is just like inevitable. And I think that's like really good storytelling is like that, where it sort of is quote unquote predictable in the sense that it makes sense. Like all of it is sort of rational.
Yeah, I mean, there's not going to be any like lay twist, Luffy's not going to die or something stupid. They're not going to kill off Zoro.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
the
like, I think that's possible, like, as, like, a sort of epilogue or, like, like, sort of implied after the fact. Because it's like, if Luffy, for instance, is following the same arc as Gold Roger, then that wouldn't be the
Yeah,
case, and, like, that wouldn't be that out of sorts. There's also, like, I could see that happening, honestly, but, like, not before the mission is complete, right? Because then it would just be
no,
purposeless. But I can see that happening. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Luffy dies, like, and then there's a little bit more in an epilogue, and this is like the very, very end of it. I wouldn't be that surprised, but that's still a ways away. That'll
yeah,
be like 5 years from now.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the with like Nami, Sanji, and Zoro, like we got a few reveals recently. Um, like in one of the SBSs. I'm not sure if you read it because it's not in the published English ones yet. But they have like an interesting little thing where like they're the sons and daughters of like the sky, earth, and the sea. Because Nami's mother is named like Beautiful Ocean, and then Sanji's mother is named Sky, and then Zoro's father is named or Zoro's mother is named like Earth. So it's like there's like sort of this like little alchemical thing going on.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
most of like the structuring comes from like it has it connects to like Western forms of alchemy in as much as like Western alchemy, like esotericism, derived from a lot of like Taoist alchemy along the Silk
mhm.
Road and was like translated in that way. Because there's like very direct parallels with lots of like Buddhist or Taoist, like the sort of Eastern alchemical traditions are like very much organizing principles throughout, like in terms of like the balance of elements and things. But even though this is just generally true of like even things like the Pokemon elements and things like this, like it's so deeply ingrained in like the culture of Japan that it's sort of taken for granted. But that's what's so fascinating about One Piece is that it takes so much inspiration from pretty much everywhere in the globe. Like Oda seems to be using this to actually just make sense of literally everything, which is what he describes his own
Yeah,
creative process as, is like taking all of the thoughts that he has, not just like any thoughts, not just thoughts about particular things, but like his thoughts about literally everything are just being put together into this story. And I think it's maybe the most like that's what a great work of art generally is this type of
yeah.
thing, but it's the most ambitious one going right now. Like you'd have to work for 25 years to even catch up. You
To
know what I
match
mean?
it, yeah.
And not only that, but it's like it's killing him. Like I don't know. Like I'm like he needs to take a break, but at the same time, I'm like he can't take a break because I need to know. I need to make sure this gets
Yeah,
finished.
I need to know what happens.
Yeah, but he's been working
There's an
so much
interview
for
with
so
him.
long. He like sleeps like
Uh,
3 hours a night and just works constantly.
yeah, he has like the most insane work ethic ever, and it's like I don't know if this type of work ethic was ever nearly as possible because he's just fully bankrolled, and his like entire like progeny forever is like bankrolled as well.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, I was watching some videos last night of times where he's like recorded like this, like his own creative process of like sketching things out, like storyboards, and then filling them in, like and perpetual.
mhm.
And that's basically what happened with this latest issue is that he got like 3/4 of the way done with his normative process for it. But he's also usually working on more than one storyboard at a time, like, or
Yeah.
mangakas generally do that, where they'll have like they're working like one or two chapters in advance, which is why they take break weeks and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
but I like he's also put the burden on himself of being consulted on like all of the live action stuff and the anime stuff and a lot of the merchandising stuff. So he's like really been doing this for so long. It's kind of incredible. Like he's living the dream in a way, but it's also like definitely had a massive impact on his health, and this is true for like other people in the same field where they have like a
Mhm.
huge like burnout rate, or like
Well, or they just break.
yeah, they
Like
just break because you can't
the Berserk
physically
guy
do this.
broke. Yeah, the Hunter x Hunter guy or like the Yu Yu Hakusho guy, like the like that's why Yu Yu Hakusho ended early was because he just broke. Um, and it's just like they just don't have the same they don't have the fortitude he does, basically.
Yeah, but even then, it's like I'm starting to be worried anyway that it's like. that he should really take some time off, or have a have more of his assistants do some more things. Because honestly, his real genius, like a lot of his sketches, just like the first draft that he does, if anything, of just like placing
Hmm.
the figures, like, and dividing up the panels and like putting where the dialogue will be, etc., is really the whole story. Like everything else is kind of window dressing on top of that. Like there's a lot of beautiful artwork.
Hmm.
There's a lot of like storytelling that's done with things in the background, etc., and you can sort of see how a lot of that, at least in recent years, like in recent arcs, has become kind of more simplified due to like his eye problems and like just general fatigue for having done this for so long. But that's not really
Hmm.
like what people are in it for, because no matter what, like if he puts out the first draft, people would touch it up and like finish it in the same way that some of the action sequences in Wano are kind of difficult to follow just based off of the drawings themselves, but when they animate it, it's like, oh, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, exactly. And you can tell he's like sort of like especially post like Marine Furry, there's much he's much more economical with like the double page spreads. Like it's fairly rare to get a full double page spread. So you get
Yeah,
these like one third double page spreads and then like everything else is is like more dialogue basically.
yeah,
Um People always shit on the double page spread from Whole Cake Island, where it's like where it's Jinbei setting the cup down in front of Big Mom because it's like a double page spread and then like surrounding it, like little square blocks around it are just like a ton of panels. Um,
yeah.
but
I
yeah,
don't know.
but
I
he
think,
he just has to be more economical with it now because he just needs to convey more information more quickly.
I mean, it's also just like he kind of knows. Like, I think at this point he can kind of cut himself some slack because, like, even this latest chapter, right? It was like unfinished, but like they've already put out things being like, oh, when it comes out in the volume form, it'll be like finished. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's sort of like if he just wanted to finish it, like the whole like, and like people are so psychotic, myself included now, that
Hmm.
I'm sorry, what's that in the background? Are you vacuuming? Oh,
I triggered my on the ground vacuum cleaner by
oh,
accident. I walked
okay.
past it.
Well, I was just gonna say that people are so psychotic about following it that they'll read the scanlations and the most like you know what I mean, like, and then eventually you can wait for the more perfect version of it to come around later. I mean, I've at least done that myself, where I'll read or I read the earliest scan of it, and then you see like the fan translation, and then I'll probably read it when it's like more perfectly finished as well. um
Yeah, I read every chapter like that comes out like three times. I read the like raws basically. I read just like the pure visual because the dialogue isn't in yet, or it's because they cut
Yeah,
out the
you sent me that
Japanese.
last night, and I was like, nice. And then I found the
Yeah.
translation this morning.
Yeah, and then there's like a super ESL like AI translation that comes out, and then there's like the TCB like the general like pirate group that does it, and then on
Yeah,
Sundays is the official.
yeah. It's
Um,
literally like he has an entire like world, like he has like the economy of like a small nation behind this
yeah,
comic book. It's really unprecedented, the degree to which he's like done created something out of not like just out of his imagination, really. But
yeah,
it's become such a massive, like, I don't know, like it's not even like you can't even compare it to something like Disney World or like American comic books, because American comic books are much more of like a collaborative effort. Even in the earliest days, if you like the earliest Superman comics, were like teams of people, like writers and people were in charge of writing, people in charge of drawing, and then there was like a lot more division of labor. But it's really like a solo effort for the most part. There's like people who help in like the wake of that, in the same way that like Miyazaki's works in that way. I think it's just part of like the Japanese organizational principles, like the sort of like zaibatsu form of things. Like
hmm,
they still have their emperor, like they still believe in a type of unitary authority when it comes to things like this. So that's like Oda is literally like a fucking sensei. Like he's like he's like a warlord. He is like an emperor.
Have
over
you seen the
this
interview?
universe.
Have you seen the interview with like one of the editors where the editor said that Oda told him that he would die for One Piece? The like he said that the editor needs to be ready to die for One Piece because all of his expenses will be paid out in perpetuity if he dies.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
I mean, he like that's like real art, you know. This is like a
Yeah,
real. There's not really anyone to compare it to. I like not. I can't think of anyone that you can compare it to. At least alive right now. Like there are people like you could compare it to Shakespeare, honestly, in terms of like Edward de Vere Shakespeare, in the sense of like putting so much into art that it like destroys your own life in a way, like putting your life on the line by making this thing, expending like all of your time upon it and things like that. That's the closest thing I can think of. And even then, he was
yeah,
more of a scriptorian. So it's
sure.
it's really unfathomable. It's sort of like people in film circles anyway tend to place this type of myth, this type of aura onto people like Kubrick, etc., like perfectionists, like people who have like this sort of singular vision and are like kind of control freaks about it. But Oda is on on another level. Um, I do want to talk more about like the
The
general,
actual.
the actual thing itself, but it kind of is like talking about everything. It's difficult to just talk about this because it's so big and it's still expanding.
Yeah,
But I
I
think
don't know
that
where to
like
attack it from.
I would say that I think that it's like strongly in that. So like I think like okay, like the very origin of the idea here is like the I think sort of like a pun. I'm not saying this is literally true, but it makes sense this way of like the revolution of a globe, like in the sense of going around a globe, like the circumnavigation being and a revolution being sort of the same thing. So you have like literally the revolution of an entire world represented as this circumnavigation of the globe. They're the same thing in One Piece. Luffy getting all the way around the world is the exact same thing and causes at the exact same time a global revolution. Um,
Roger says directly as much in the Odin flashback.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he literally says like the unprecedented circumnavigation of the entire globe, and then before that he says like, oh hey Rayleigh, come with me, we're going to turn the world upside down. So it's pretty direct about that.
yeah, yeah. And so that's the literal plot. So then it's like, who is the protagonist? Well, it's Monkey D. Luffy. Obviously, is going influenced by the stories of like Sun Wukong, the like sort of monkey-tailed protagonist of like Chinese folklore, um, which is also like the basis of things like Dragon Ball Z, like Goku,
Yeah,
etc. And Oda like worked under Toriyama, I'm pretty sure, like early on in his career after being like a wunderkind who won a bunch of awards for his like first mangas that he made when he was like 17. So he's
yeah,
literally just done nothing but this for his entire life. Like he kind of just did exactly what he wanted to to do. So this character of Sun Wukong, like in the original like story, is representative of a kind of like it's like vaguely Buddhist in background against the sort of established Confucianism of the times. So it's about a like sort of trickster king of the monkeys character who goes to war with all of the gods that are representative of like the sort of state philosophies and theologies of that time period. And so that's like still the basic premise in One Piece. We have
hmm
Monkey D. Luffy, who's the king of the pirates, basically, like and he is actively going to war with all of the reigning ideologies of the world that exist right now, and that's as in Oda's perspective, the ones that he sees. So this is the organizing principle. Every single one of the arcs is about unseating a particular philosophical or theological or cosmological view of the world, um, and it's unseated by its direct antithesis in the form of Luffy desiring nothing but his own freedom, and further like and part of that is the him wanting others around him, his friends, to be free, in especially in Wano, etc., to be free to eat as much as they want, to like be to flourish and to not be oppressed, etc. So this
yeah.
is the most basic form of the protagonist here is you have the embodiment, and like this even comes on like has cosmological implications later with the introduction of like Joy Boy and the sort of sun god, etc., who Luffy is like an incarnation of. It's and like this and the sun revolves around the globe, etc. So like all of these things are
Hmm.
tied together in the imagination of Oda. Um, so what else is included in that is like the contemporary state of geopolitics and the world as Oda sees it in his own life, which is why it's often very topical. One Piece about what like in the times that it's coming out. It's very interesting to look at what story arcs are happening in One Piece at the same time as the quote unquote like story arcs you could say that are happening in the news of geopolitics, because like something like most basic early on one being like Alabasta and the Iraq War and like the search
Yeah.
for a weapon of mass destruction in a desert as organized by Baroque Works, which is very explicitly designed to look like Western Anglo Freemasonry, like with the like
Yeah.
powdered wigs and whatnot. Um, and so against like a like it's so and then like so you could say like right now we're looking at it, like we just got the backstory of like the God Valley, and that is pretty much representative in a lot of ways of the Middle East, particularly the Levant, um, in the One Piece universe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's he's pretty direct about all this stuff. It's pretty great. Um,
So I think that it's like his vision of the world, like what's like people obviously want to attach a lot of stuff to this, a lot of like we bitched about Hassan trying
Hassan.
to make this a democratic socialist tale or something like that, but Oda is far more like Japanese than that. Like he wouldn't be so like what I mean. Democratic socialism and that character is very much like a Western thing. But like Oda
Hmm.
has a lot of respect for like captains, like good leaders and things like this, unitary executive authority. You have like people like Whitebeard, or even Luffy himself is like the king of the pirates. He's not just like he's not talking about the fraternity of pirates or whatever. There is like a paradoxical relationship between his idea of kingship being that he would feel oppressed by having to um, be like the sovereign of a nation or something like that. He has no interest in that, but
Hmm.
he befriends a lot of these sort of monarchs as part of his crew uh, in various parts of it,
I
and
mean,
it's never
it's
like
most direct in Dressrosa, I think, where he like goes into the Colosseum and then becomes like king of all of the kings, basically.
yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of examples of this, but it's
There's
like what
tons,
he
yeah.
and like there's like he's literally the son of the leader of the of the Revolutionary Army. Like
Yeah.
it's not it's not about democratic elections and things like this. It's not about humanitarian efforts. It's about like real revolutionary, like the necessity of revolutionary violence under the conditions of the unipolar hegemony by a the celestial dragons, you could say, are like the elites of the world who they don't even have like necessarily like their own place as much as they have just organized the entire world to serve their interests.
Yeah, I mean the Koala, one of the Revolutionary Army people, says this like directly during right before the Reverie. She's like, our enemies isn't necessarily the world government, but really it's the oligarchs. You know, it's really the Celestial
Yeah,
Dragons themselves.
it's like this is like the same reason why the Marines aren't just this basic evil against like some basic good of the pirates. It's like the things are all mixed and muddled because every single thing could be instrumentalized at any point in the interest of this class. It's very much like a class based world in One Piece, like explicitly all over the
Hmm.
place. And even though there are things like you could say like racism exists in the world of One Piece in the terms of like fishmen and things like that, but that isn't the operating principle. Like that isn't the organizing structure of the world in One
No.
Piece. And there's also like, you know, there's a sexism in One Piece and all of these sorts of other things, but that still isn't the organizing principle or the organizing conflict, the fundamental contradiction in the world. The fundamental contradiction is between the class of celestial dragons and everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, they're really direct about it too, in the sense that they say like we are not human. Like we're not trash. Like we don't even want to breathe the same air. You know, they wear comedic like little bubble helmets
Yeah, I also
to
think
not
that's
breathe the
probably
same
going to
air.
be tied to like them being from the moon or something later, where it's sort of like
Well,
a
yeah, I mean, I don't
fetishization
think that
of.
they're from the moon. I think that that's just their like narrativization of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I don't know. Like I've been thinking a lot about like Enel, obviously, because I'm rereading Skypiea, because that's where I was initially bored, but now like having the full context of it and reading it, it's actually much more interesting. Like that's
oh yeah.
like One Piece is so much better, like in its own like as it goes on, that it actually makes the earlier parts better as it goes on too. So it's sort of like that's why I think inspires such a like loyal audience is the fact that it's like an improving asset, like it's something that like if you're investing your time in it, it's
Hmm.
it appreciate like it gets better, like it actually pays off. It's not disappointing. Like there's not a point in One Piece that I've been disappointed with. I've been generally like just enthused by its continued unfolding. The only parts that were like disappointing in some way to me on my initial read were sort of just the early arcs, which just seemed sort of like low stakes. Like, oh, this is just like kind of like a fun comic book. Like it's not that big of a deal. You know, like these things that are happening are just kind of like fun or whatever. But hidden in plain sight in all of those things are like the seeds of a global, like larger conflict, which unfolds so slowly. Like the exposition of the world that exists in One Piece happens so slowly that it's really amazing that he had the patience to hold on to some of that stuff. Like if you just think about Kuma's backstory right now, he's been holding on to that since he was first
15
introduced.
years.
Yeah, for like 15 years, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean the and you can sort of see the seeds being sown right now. Like you like literally the first chapter of Wano ending, it's like, you know, there's the guy who's like stained by flames or whatever. And it makes it pretty obvious like who it is, but you know, it's not obvious where the you know, the Black Pearl is or whatever. I forget what the name of the ship is, but like the ship with all the black sails and stuff. Like, but he's, you know, he's like sowing more of these seeds now, which will probably pay off sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
Um, but like, you know, you're used to the structure enough where you can kind of like see how it's all being constructed. Um, but I don't know, the my reread like clarified so much of the like sort of mirrored structure, and it really is like incredible how consistent he is with like the imagery and the sort of like language he's built up over 25 years. I mean, there's like I find like
it's all
new
about
inversions like
inversions.
every day.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
about inversions because one of my favorite things I think about it as a like I guess this also happens in like he probably was inspired in some way, like in a lot of ways by Dragon. It's like a perfection of Dragon Ball Z in a lot of ways, or like Dragon
Hmm.
Ball. Dragon Ball becoming Dragon Ball Z is sort of like Dragon Ball's like One Piece before the time skip, and then Dragon Ball Z is kind of like post time skip Dragon Ball universe, where it's like a
Hmm.
much bigger thing. And I grew up watching Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z like every day as a kid, so it's like very nostalgic for me in that sense. Um, it's funny because like, when I was a kid, One Piece was on, but it was still like early days of One Piece, like pre time skip arcs, and I started to feel like I was like I'm too old for this stuff, like
It
at the
looked
time.
corny.
Yeah, I was like this looks kind of corny and like kind of ridiculous, and I've kind of appreciate its corniness and ridiculousness more now than I would have then. Like when you're a teenager, you really kind of want like you're like want to watch like Death Note and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
things that are like serious and like I probably would
Berserk, horse
or
rape.
like Attack
Like,
on Titan. Attack on Titan is very much like darker, more grim, or like Berserk and things like that. Yeah, I thought that was like
yeah.
what depth was sort of more overt, tragic organizational structure. But as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate like picaresque comedies like that, like One Piece, as being like in some ways like the highest form of literature in that they can contain the most lighthearted things as well as the darkest things at like the same time. Like it plays with all of the range of like human emotions.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the most comedic arcs is when Luffy goes to hell. Uh,
Luffy goes
it's
to like metaphorical hell like a couple of
all the
times, like
time.
all the
Yeah,
time.
I'm
It's
talking about
really
Impel Down,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Impel Down is such a great arc. There's like they're all really great. Like I can't like I mean I would still say that I don't understand people who complain about the time skip or whatever because I don't know I haven't just read it as like a single piece. Like I
Mm,
don't
They're
understand.
complaining about the anime because the like week to week factory production of the anime just became like abysmal during the time skip, from what I understand.
That
Um,
makes sense.
like yeah, like there's like a clip where it's when he's doing the like sumo wrestling at the beginning of Wano, it's literally a single panel of him sumo wrestling. That's like it's like 10 minutes.
Oh, it's just like held there. Yeah, that's like why
Yeah,
the
it's
yeah
literally like a
I
held shot with reactions. It's
I
crazy.
can't imagine. I was looking at it would take 12 days of full watching, just sitting there on like continual watching. 12 days to watch all of the episodes of One Piece so far, and it definitely didn't take me that long to read all of it. So I don't understand why people would subject themselves to that. But
No, I mean, they're just lazy. I mean,
yeah,
I think they're just scared of reading something
yeah,
on a certain level. It's sad, but yeah. I mean, I like as far as the inversions, like I mean, I think one of the more direct ones is the first introduction of Kuma. He's like standing next to Moria, and their like frames are exactly like inverted, where
yeah,
Kuma is like top heavy and Moria is bottom heavy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and they are sort of like similar in the sense that like uh you know Kuma like absorbs the like pain of people, and then he Moria like absorbs like the shadows in
yeah.
that sense.
I was
And,
thinking
and
of
you
like
oh, go ahead.
when it comes to inversions, like what I think is this is like the point I didn't finish is that a lot of the antagonists, like the kind of more comedic antagonists, like the less threatening antagonists, and even some of the threatening antagonists, um, like after they're defeated, tend to like sort of like I love how Oda has those like title panel story arcs that he'll just like imply a like large character development of like these minor characters through like single panels over as opposed to like giving
Mhm.
them like a whole thing. But a lot of them just like they like turn their lives around or whatever, and then they end up becoming like major allies or show back up later on. Um, in like a completely new light. I think it's like it really it's like the most amazing part of One Piece in a lot of ways. I think is the fact that a lot of like former foes, etc., come around to be allies later on, and like it's like you see, there's like a lot of character development in that sense. Because you could say like Luffy doesn't really develop as a character that much. There's really only like one like I think that he develops most like in the time skip like the leading up to the time skip like to the 50% point is like where he like learns like basically the only lesson he learns, which is that like shit's real and there's like there's like actual sacrifices, there's actual stakes to things, and that you can't just like things aren't going to just be easy victories, etc., as they are like for most of the first half of the story. Things just seem to like just turn out into just work, but it's like he doesn't really have to reckon with like massive failure, and that's really the lesson he learns, and it's sort of like he's like the lesson is like, okay, I can't ever allow this sort of failure to happen again, and that's why the stakes are higher in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, and then like the time where he gets like threatened with those stakes the most in the time skip would be Whole Cake, and like it has like the most horrific body horror in the entire series, where he's like wrapping his arms around himself, trying to like break his hands off.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and you can like see it, like you can see it like stretching at like the wrist, and it's like almost breaking, and it's disgusting. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, he doesn't want to lose Sanji, and he's very direct about it. He's like, I can't get the One Piece without Sanji.
yeah, and that's probably also literally true, as will be revealed like in the future of the things. Like like there's also like a lot of times where like Luffy says something which is like more true than he could know at the time. Like I like things like that where there's like Oda, as I say all the time, like the real masterful thing in storytelling is to have like these ornate structures, but to like, but not to like just give them out in terms of like exposition, not to just be like, here, reader, here's the structure, and like now you can put it together, but to hide it so well in plain sight that you learn things about like implicitly or almost subconsciously, and then later like just recognize that you already knew that somehow. And that's like the most enchanting part of a work of art is like when you're like there's more meaning being given to you than you could make meaning of unless you read it again, and then you would be like,
Yeah,
holy shit, it was there the whole time. That's like the and like that it's a very it's very it's like a high wire act to do that, because a lot of people won't pick up on it, which is also why you have tons of like fan theories and things like that, and people talking about like people quote unquote reading too much into things. But oftentimes, like, you're supposed to read that much into it because a real great artist is putting everything into everything. So it's not
yeah.
like you could possibly read too much into it because it's I got like this work is literally Oda's entire life. He spends most of his waking life. Like if there's any One Piece obsessive, they're not nearly as obsessed about it as with it as much as the creator is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an infinite well. You could go any number of directions talking about it. I mean, it's crazy seeing like so much of his like influence and like and then how basically racist people get essentially when you try to interpret it. It's kind of insane.
Well, I think
Um,
one of the coolest things that happens as it goes on is that you have people who like when they're teenagers or kids are sending like fan art to Oda and him being like, "Oh, this is pretty good," and like this like you have some talent or whatever to these kids who are reading it, and then later on he's like, "Hey, this kid who sent me fan art 10 years ago is now writing his own comic book in the thing." And then what's even crazier is when those people finish their things and he's still going like, and it's
yeah,
like there'll be people like are like I grew up as like a One Piece fan and now I'm writing in Shonen Jump, and okay, now I've like finished my thing and Oda is still going. It's not over yet.
yeah. My Hero Academia is going to end soon,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that was one of the fan art ones. Um,
Like I don't know. There's not really anything like that. There's really not. There's it's a massive feat of art.
Yeah, I mean speaking of like the sort of like prophetic statements and stuff. I love when he like conceals that in the sort of like the like foreigner characters. Like
Yeah,
the he like conceals that within the speech from the sort of like Japanese hair guy in Enies Lobby. Like he has like a speech that's very like prophetic of like certain future events. And then the same is true with like Giola, the art woman. Like
yeah,
the art that she constructs is literally like this like covering cherub, like right eye closed, left eye open, like giant like double doors. And they're like trying to cover up a light. It's crazy. Um, I mean, and my favorite example of that is when the Vikings in Little Garden talk about slaying the blood-stained serpent.
yeah. There's so much of it. Um,
Yeah,
there's so much of it. Like, and it's literally I can't think of anything else like it in the sense that it incorporates stories and like themes, settings, etc. from the entire world. Like I can't think of anywhere that does not exist in the world of One Piece. Like there are parallels to most of Asiatic cultures and societies, European, American, African, all like Polynesian,
Caribbean even like
Caribbean,
there's yeah
every part of the world is represented in it, even like Antarctic conditions. There are like these like kind of off the map like ice places where like only scientists reside and things like that. Like everything
oh
that
yeah
actually exists in our world exists in some way, in some like reflected form, some refracted form in the world of One Piece, and has like similar implications. Like this is why I'm personally I see that this is a theory that's out there, but rereading Skypiea, I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure Dragon or like that Luffy's line in some way are like connected to the Shandians, because in another instance, Oda said that Luffy's supposed to be like Brazilian or like Latin American. I think he said specifically Brazilian
He
because like
said
Ace,
specifically Brazilian.
specifically Brazilian because Ace is Portugas the Ace, right? Which is like obviously a connection to
Oh,
Portugal, like Portuguese, and the Portuguese were the first ones to Japan as well.
oh, and then Ace is the first one in Japan, sort of.
Yeah, yeah. So like that's the level of the shit that's going on, where it's
Oh,
like
I didn't
he's
pick up on that.
like he a lot of like making sense of it requires like allusions to the real world history of like piracy, which is also the world history of like trade and shipping written networks and things, and really the history of what you could call like globalism, or like the connection of the world into this one piece of the world as we have it
Hmm.
today. Like today the world is actually one piece, like it's all in one piece. There is a UN, there is a world government, there is international law and like things beneath it, like you know what I mean. Like that's not always historic, that hasn't always been historically the case. So it's like there's a reason why this story and the way that this story is being told could only happen like now. Obviously there's like Japan has a long history of piracy, et cetera. Just as, like there's tons of pirate tales and seafaring tales like that, but he compared, like he'll bring it all the way back to like Odysseus and like the Odyssey and these sorts of things. But he's also drawing on like biblical parallels, and he's drawing on like the stories of Vikings, and he's also drawing, he draws on like everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally everything I read like improves my understanding of One Piece. Melville was really helpful. So
Yeah,
was
Melville.
Dante.
I'm pretty sure Oda is a fan of Melville, like on a deeper
Yeah,
level than people would guess.
I mean, Whitebeard shit, man. It's the Moby Dick.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And I don't think
Yeah.
that's even like I saw there's I think also in some ways he communicates things by which letters he chooses to reply to publicly. Uh
Oh, yeah.
because like a lot of the times like he rewards readers who are like really good at picking up details that he put in. He'll like he'll just like do like like no comments to sort of be like, yeah, you're reading well, like he'll just say something like that. But there's one reader who was like, did you name the Moby Dick after like uh there's like a he references some movie in which another thing is named Moby Dick, and it's like the reader obviously didn't get the that both of them are alluding to the same book, Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And Oda is kind of like, no, like I'm referring to Melville.
Yeah, my favorite example of that is when he just straight up like lies. Because someone's like, "Why did you name Corazon Rocinante?" For like the Don Quixote horse, and then he's like, "I just felt like it." It's
Yeah,
like, yeah, yeah, bro, of course, of course. But like the
but
more
that is
illiterate
also true.
readers will point to it. Well, that's
Well,
true. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Where it's like if you're organizing things like this, it's like, well, I feel like this makes sense. So, ultimately like the author of anything in a creative work like that doesn't have any sort of like, oh, like ultimately it's all, he doesn't have to do this, you know what I mean? No, he doesn't have to write One Piece, he doesn't have to make this. Like there's no pressing need for it to exist, aside from like I guess now there's a whole industry behind it. But his initial impulse to tell this story was all because he just felt like it. In the same way that like Luffy's impulse is like he just does what he feels like. But there is a reason and a rationality behind it.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're definitely right. Um, have you read his one shots? Have you read God's? Oh,
Yeah, I
I
checked it
forget.
out when you told me I should.
Yeah, yeah. I think that that's going to be the sort of like general ultimate conceit of the whole rubber.
Yeah,
Uh,
like Emu, or what's the name of the guy on the throne?
yeah, emu. Because it's going to be emu. Uh, like being like sort of an ink thing where Luffy is like an eraser, but also like a
Yeah,
writer in a sense because like um, stamps are
rubber.
authorial. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so I think
yeah,
that's
like
going to be sort
rubber
of
on
like the
ink,
ultimate
things
thing.
like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, like
the,
it's
the
also
the
like a
ink
lot
thing
of
is
these.
represented with. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like a lot of the organizing principles, like they seem like irrational, but they kind of follow a poetic logic in the sense of like all of the like all of the like a lot of the Japanese numerology stuff is like that's like a poetic way of organizing things. It's not like
Oh
quote
yeah,
unquote rational. Like Nika or whatever is like the two numbers that were like missing out
Tunon.
of, Yeah, 2-9 were like the two numbers that were missing out of all of the ones represented in the other devil fruits that are in the main crew. And that's like one of the letters that he actually like replied to and just like didn't say anything about, but it was kind of like just wait like until you see like why I haven't done that yet because I've already planned for this in advance. Like
Well,
that's
it's an inversion of 5 6. It's if you turn 5 6 upside down.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
that's he
it's
does stuff
beautiful.
like that all the time. Or like a lot of it is like with food, food metaphors and like food references like are very, very big for Oda. Like food is like possibly the most central thing in the world of One Piece, like beyond like there's like money exists obviously, but money is really only ever a proxy for like food.
Yeah, yeah. I mean the one of the most beautiful food metaphors is like you have to like know how chestnuts are roasted to understand it. It's so beautiful.
Oh, I was saying, like one of my favorite things is like the character named Prospero, but it's Perospero, and it's
Yeah.
supposed. You said that that's like an onomatopoeia for like licking a lollipop, and he has like a giant tongue. Like there's like little puns, like little jokes that actually like build a whole character. Where it's like where like he was reading The Tempest by Shakespeare and being like, that sounds sort of like a lollipop, and then made a character.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's also I was literally reading The Tempest right now, and in scene two, well, Act two, scene two, there's like a candy metaphor.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's so
So
funny.
it's uh he Oda when he isn't working and doing all of this is like known to be like quite a voracious reader as well. But like he in his typical Japanese humble fashion talks about how he never has enough time to read as much as he would want. But that all that means is that he's read far more than the vast majority of people.
Yeah, what do you think of my whole Blackbeard is Dante Satan, and then Aokiji is going to be Judas and freeze him.
Well, I think that there's like multiple parallel like figures that are like sort of representative of like Satan, Lucifer, etc.
Sure.
Like I think it's just like a perpetual like it's just a symbol that he uses a lot to set up as like just antagonisms, but he also used them ironically. Like he uses a symbol both in its like oblique or like opaque form in the sense of like you'll have like a good character with a halo, but then you'll also have like a demonic figure with a halo, and you'll have like a demonic figure with like Satan horns named fucking Mr. Satan, but then you'll also have like the good characters who are considered demonic or like presented in demonic form even though they represent the good. So he that's like the sort of Blakean inversions, like the double
Yes.
quote sort of quaternal inversions where it's like you have like what you could say like good in the form of good, good in the form of evil, evil in the form of good, and evil in the form of evil, where it's like these quaternal double inversions that make up a lot of his strategies for right like creating tension. It's being pulled in four directions, which is true of like the world of One Piece. But there
And
ultimately
Luffy's
is this
limbs.
red line dividing the good from the evil. It just doesn't run directly through where you would think it would run through.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's it's right above. I love the little map I drew where it's where it's like the little four Zoas map, or the
Yeah, no,
Milton map rather.
there's
It's
well, I would
crazy.
say there's a bunch of cases where he directly references like William Blake's artistic works as well as like illustrate Dore's illustrations of Dante and things like that. But I think
Yeah.
that that's like very common amongst manga writers, creators, just because like if they're interested in the history of their own medium and their history of their own medium does ultimately lead to like the history of like illustrated literature and the sort of printing press, the use of like printing for illustrated literature is like directly connected to the Western canon of literature. So as much as we have, and like obviously our own comic book tradition, when it was much better than it is now, was just as much directly inspired by all of these things. I mean, we're not
Hmm.
that far away from like the new X-Men in like the 70s having Northrop Frye as a fucking character within the comic book narrative that like that like they go to Toronto and Beast, the like blue man who's of like a scholar or whatever,
Yeah,
wants to go meet Northrop Frye. Like that literally like was like the tone of our comic books, etc. When we were in our like golden age of producing illustrated literature. It's just that we pretty much industrially destroyed our own ability to make these types of works of art. Whereas the Japanese, they still have a mass consumer base for these things. So you can like that's why like these days manga is much more popular than comic books even in America. Like they outsell comic books, graphic novels in America because we literally can't compete on that level. Um, like and if anything, like the ones that are do the best in recent times are ones that like ape the style of manga, like even like if you want to say like like Avatar, The Last Airbender, etc.,
sure.
is designed explicitly like a shonen like anime slash manga, and like that's they kind of just extended um American culture in the terms of like our animation and comics industry, which was like our powerhouse, especially for propaganda, et cetera, in the 20th century. But because Japan is in such a unique position geopolitically, because it's kind of post historical in the sense that like the Japanese don't even have like a real government, like they're kind of just a puppet state, but they're a puppet state that has like a lot of aesthetic freedoms that we don't necessarily have because they're Japan, so they can do weirder stuff. Um, that's why you get things like Neon Genesis Evangelion and stuff like that being made in Japan, whereas like a story like that would never fly. Like you could never pitch that here at all to anyone until it was like proven already to be successful. And now it's like, oh yeah, Neon Genesis, even that stuff sort of sells, and we don't know why. The storytelling itself is I think speaks more to the Japanese because they're in such a weird position because they do have like this culture, like they have a long history of like Japaneseness, etc., Shintoism, all of those sorts of things that they have. But then they went through like the apocalyptic scenario of just being totally occupied and dominated by America, turned into like an American military base, and so they're forced to come to grips with not just their own history, but like world history in order to make sense of their position in it.
Hmm. Yeah, nothing is nearly as far-reaching as One Piece, though, as far as that conceit. I mean,
Yeah, it's like but it's also like it's also obviously standing on the shoulders of giants, like in terms
oh
of like
yeah.
Japanese. Not only that, but like Japanese philosophy is also like a very underrated genre, I suppose. But also
Mm.
just the fact that out of anywhere in the Western world, NATO hegemony, whatever, however you want to put it, pretty much anywhere in the world, I'm pretty sure if you look at the polling data, the most illiterate in terms of like classical definitions of literacy, like vocabulary and like various other things like that. The most literate society in the world is Japan because of manga, because it's not uncool for a bunch of young boys, especially young boys, to be reading a lot in Japan. Like it's normal and it's cool, like and it's culturally acceptable. So like they have, and like that's why something like One Piece can even be written because it's like not only cultivating a bunch of young readers with like a very challenging narrative, like in a way that's like entertaining and engaging, so it doesn't seem challenging. But like what's actually being done in One Piece is very challenging. Like if you're like, I would compare it to stuff like Spencer and like things like Thomas Pynchon and things like that in terms of like
Yeah.
the ambition and like the themes and things like this. But because they have this mass literate audience that demands more and more things like this. That's why they can create things like that. It's sort of like a chicken egg situation. Like we had a very literate society as well. Like and comic books were a big part of that. But part of what destroyed comics in America is was the sort of we have like a lot of cultural biases against it, and we still do. They've just been inverted. So now instead of it being like, oh, comic books are trash and they like poison people's minds, they've just been turned into Marvel movies where it's like, oh, these are just like where we can do our propaganda most efficiently,
Oh,
and
it's,
they're
I mean,
not
it's
like
also inverted.
challenging.
I mean, it's also inverted in the sense that it's like, the sort of like anti literature kind of bent. Like it's like like there's a sort of pretension to that, whereas like, ooh, like I'm humble. I read Green Lantern. I watch
Yeah,
Marvel movies.
yeah. Where it's not like, hey, actually, these things are just on are like capable of being just as ambitious as like the canon of Western literature, and like, hey, we're going to be inspired by the canon of Western literature in the way the Japanese are. Their whole thing is like actually like ambition and all of that stuff is all bad, and like what we want is like schlock. We just want like
Yeah, Red Letter Media B movie reviews.
yeah, we want people being like it's if you just think of like the comic relief that exists in let's say like Western comic books now is someone being like, oh, well, that just happened. I mean, that's like the classic version of it. But the jokes that exist in One Piece are much more like they're like jokes that exist like by means of the medium. Like they're very clever jokes. A lot of the times, I don't know if they like translate as well. There's probably a lot of humor that I don't pick up on just because I'm
Yeah,
not reading it in the original Japanese. But some of the stuff where is like is just like sight gags, like visual gags and things like that. Like the type of humor that was prevalent in American animation in like the 1920s and 30s and 40s and things like that, where like which we now consider to be sort of like lowbrow humor, like slapstick humor, things like that. But like you can see more of like Charlie Chaplin in One Piece than you can in, let's say, the latest Marvel movie.
yeah. I mean, one of my favorite sight gags is Baron Tamago, the like the infinitely regenerating Eggman.
Oh
Where he
yeah.
gets like sliced in half and you can see like the yolks coming out and then he just comes back as like Viscount Chicken. Like it's great.
Well,
Um,
it's like that type of humor is like also in some ways like it's like I want to like say like a lot of like these the quote unquote like pretentious heights of white male chauvinist literature as people describe it, like things like Gravity's Rainbow or Ulysses or like Finnegan's Wake. Those are full of the most crass, like lowbrow humor in these terms, where it's like one of the best parts of Gravity's Rainbow is like Slothrop like diving into a toilet bowl and swimming through the underground labyrinth of pipes, and another character like has a toilet bowl stuck on their foot, like these sort of dumb sight gags that would exist in the comic books that Thomas Pynchon is directly referencing, like Plastic Man, which is also the inspiration for a lot of
One
One
Piece.
Piece, because Plastic Man was so popular and it was given out to all the soldiers in World War II that they were also brought over to Japan. Like, you know, that there would just be a ton of issues of Plastic Man sitting around. And the Japanese were picking these up and they're like, oh, we can make comic books. And then they started making comic books the same way they saw Disney movies and they're like, oh, we can make these.
Yeah, I mean the DC people are they're obsessed with tower scaling in the same way that like the Western anime people are as well. But
Well, it's like
you know, pla
the discourse around this latest chapter is like mostly about pornography, like because it's
yeah,
revealed that like Bonnie is actually like mentally like 12 years old, but and so then people were like, oh, but she's depicted as being an adult, so is this pedophilia to draw like cartoon porn about this? And it's like, how the fuck is this what people's concerns are? Like people are like so obsessed with like a lot of the like you could say this is like a like when people describe Orientalism, you could say that a lot of it comes down to like people making a fetish out of like anime and manga and being like this is sort of like a sexual thing implicitly, that like all of it is just like fodder for sexual fantasies and things like that, because it's like, you know, oh, anime is this like salacious thing and or whatever, like in the way that
yeah, it's
Oda's
ukiyo-e
constantly
tentacle rape.
yeah. Because like Oda's constantly poking fun at like, you know, the like perverts in his audience and things like that who think that Nami is hot, but like he's also just like aware that he's writing for a lot of like adolescent boys. But that doesn't mean that that's like the most important central part of the fucking thing. And in a way,
Yeah,
that's like a way like that's really not taking it seriously as a work of art. are placing it in the same context as something like DeLillo or Pynchon or like these quote unquote like serious things that like no one's like, oh yeah, the whole point of like that part's so like sexual or whatever, like like that's not the point of art. Like there are parts that are obviously like erotically charged or not, just because human life is like that. Like you can't really have life without that. Those are like elements of life, but they're not like the central defining element of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hot when the girl fucks the car in V. Um, it's obviously not the central point of any of this stuff, but I don't think that these people know how to talk about One Piece otherwise. Like,
I
it's
just mean like
they're just
it also like, but it also like it has like the inverse effect where now people are like, oh, like, do you like anime? Like, are you a pervert? Like, you know what I mean? Because it's like
yeah,
that's like
yeah.
because like there are like legitimately a lot of like a lot of people are attracted or like drawn to the fandoms or whatever around these things for perverted reasons. Like they're like actively like perverting it, like in the sense of like whoa, we can make porn out of this, which
Yeah, I
isn't the
mean,
case for like literature. It's literally just because it has a visual element. Well, I guess you could say fan fiction. There's like Harry Potter fan fiction or whatever, which is just as sexualizing or of everything in it. But I don't know. Like it's weird that that's like seems to be like what like the sort of erotic comics or whatever in Japan aren't like the major market. Like that is like a like offshoot of it, and like like the fucking hikikomori phenomenon, things like that. Like obviously that's like
mhm.
a thing that exists and like people are aware of, but that's not like representative of the major like appeal of these things. I think that
Yeah, I mean
you could say like in
the Shonen
America
Jump is like sold out every week.
yeah, it's just like a normal thing. It's just like a part of culture. So it's not like that's the explicit thing. I just think that because it's a foreign thing, um, like, and people probably encounter it a lot in that context, especially, I don't know, like adolescence or whatever. It's like,
Hmm.
like Overwatch becomes like the big porn thing. I'm like behind the times. I don't know what the fuck is like people are making porn out of these days or whatever. But I remember when that was
Steven
like,
Universe.
when like or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck people do.
Yeah.
But but it seems like that's like it takes up a much bigger part of the discourse than other things, because I think a lot of the times like the average person who just likes Dragon Ball Z, like likes these things, just likes them, like isn't gonna be talking about it in like any real way. Like you like they have no
Sure.
desire to like analyze it or talk about it. They're just like, oh yeah, that's cool, I like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like because
Yeah.
I talk about One Piece, like I know like I have some friends who like are into anime and stuff like that, and I'll like talk to them about it, and they're more just like, oh yeah, that part's cool, like I thought that was cool, like it's cool, like I just think it's cool. But if you want to talk about like, well, what do you think it's about, that's like people, I don't know if it's a more Western thing. It feels that way because I see the discourse around One Piece in like Japanese forums is like much higher than the discourse in English around it. I think that's probably true of other series as well, but I don't know.
Well,
Like,
there's a certain amount of like it becomes like sort of an industry. Like the fandom itself becomes an industry where like you just have these YouTubers who basically, they make their little theories, which is basically they write like very basic like fan fiction on like a weekly basis. Um, and then, they have their Patreons, they have like millions of subscribers, they get like consulted on the Netflix thing. It all becomes this like sort of like entrenched, um, like sort of like built up little industry where it is very easy for them to just be like, whoa, who's stronger,
it's
Gold
it's
Roger or
it's really
whatever.
because like ultimately like these fandoms are a religious thing. Like people are all connected to these stories on the level of commitment that would be the case for religions in the past. Like One
Yeah.
Piece is like straight like, and it's like people like like people feel compelled to like have their symbols of it and whatnot. Like I don't know. There's millions of times I'm driving around the streets of Wormtown and I'll see like late 20s, like early 30-year-old like dude wearing like a Naruto jacket or something walking down the street. And it's like that is like on the same level. That's meant like it's a signal in the way that like early Christians wearing the fish sign or something, where it's like
Yeah.
you are seeking like mutual recognition of people who can understand the symbols that you're putting out there, and then it's like this is like really like there's such a lack of community, etc., that it's like these things actually hold people together, create friendships and things like that far more than almost anything else now. Like we have like a massive decline in normative religious attendance and sort of affiliations and things like that. But Comic Cons and these sorts of conventions and things like that are growing exponentially because it's like people do need stories to play to like make
Organize
sense of the
around.
world. To make sense of the world, that's the whole point of art in the first place. So I do think Oda is like actively like doing good work, like in like doing very good
Yeah.
work for like organizing a community of people around this his understanding of the world. Like that's why you even see like you see in Palestine, like in the Middle East, they'll have like pro-Palestine things, and you'll see like the Straw flag amongst them because
Yeah.
you don't see that on the reverse. There is no instance, you will not find an instance of the reverse because it wouldn't make sense. Like someone who's like a hardcore Zionist would not like One Piece. It's completely opposed. Like the story that's being told is literally direct antithesis to the story that they are subscribed to regarding like the reality of the world. So like it is actually organizing. Like that's what's also amazing about One Piece is that not only is the work itself about like the global revolution, but I think that its impact as being like the biggest story, the most important story being told right now, with the most people paying attention to it, far more than like Harry Potter or like any of these Marvel things. The One Piece universe, the fandom of around One Piece is a massive global phenomenon that is unparalleled by anything else. And the fact that it's about these like themes and things like that, I think will actually have like actually does have like a real diffuse impact on how people view the world.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how to follow that. I mean, it's I think it's true. I mean, it's a really like thorough sort of like dissection of a lot of these things. I mean, like Whole Cake Island being followed by Wano, it's like you have the Western left and then the Western right directly
Yeah,
after it.
yeah. Well, it's like actually
And
talking about the dichotomy of like of Whole Cake Island and Wano, where it's really also representative of what you could call like the feminine, the ultimate of like feminine evil and the ultimate of like masculine evil,
sure,
as like two figures. Because like Big Mom, which is the greatest name ever for like
I
this
know.
figure, is so good. Her whole thing is she's like it's not like direct dominance. It's like this type of coercive dominance, like through seduction uh,
Candy.
by sweets, by nice sweet little things, like by this appearance of innocence. But it's like, oh, everyone better get along or else. Like that's like the ultimate of feminine evil, is this type of seductive evil. Um, and but
And
then
ultimately her ministers are like managing her like a child too.
yes, yes, yes. And but then Kaido, the ultimate of like masculine evil, is just straight up like submission to force. It's just about like I'm the most powerful person, and the world. They both also premise justice as being equality. They just define equality differently. Like Big Mom's
Yeah.
idea of equality is people of all races, etc., being in the same being nice to each other in the way that she describes being nice to each other.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like
Sitting at eye level and having a tea
sitting at eye
party.
level and having a tea party, like that is what equality is like everyone has to sit at eye level and have a tea party, and no one can make no one can.
She's just describing the table of like the current world government.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
like very literally.
His notion of equality is that everyone gets to fight, and then they get what they deserve. So there would be no one who's protected from the rule of force, right? So like they're both opposed in some way to the celestial dragons, kind of. Even though they're just tools of it, they can't see that, but they premise themselves in opposition to these things because to Big Mom, the world government isn't allowing everyone at the table, right? Everyone doesn't get to sit at eye level there, whereas she would when she's in charge of the whole world. And Kaido's whole thing is that those people are being protected from the rule of violence that actually reigns in the world. So he's like, we'll have equality when all of those people have to duke it out with all of us, and they'll just be like, we'll see the last man standing is the king, like, and that's what equality is everyone being tried by their merits in the sense of their ability to force others to submit to their will. So these two, as being like it's amazing. Like it's like that those two arcs are like back to back, and they like team up, and they are both damned to hell at the exact same time. Like it's amazing.
Yes. Yeah, I mean I mean, I was reading Wano for the first time around when you were sort of describing the like anarchist fascist sort of thing. And I
Yeah,
think it's like very clear with Kaido, that type of thing. I mean, there are a bunch of, gay bodybuilders in fetish gear.
yeah, that's
Um,
literally what it is. Like it's a BDSM island. Like when you get to the secret island, they'll get transformed into like BDSM like fetish gear. It's hilarious.
yeah, it's so funny. Um, and then Big Mom is like, she's got the 34 ministers who really manage her. She has like this like sort of pseudo republic type thing. Um,
Yeah, and
it's
it's like very like more of like Fabian in the sense of like, well, we'll all have a nice little tea party and do arts and crafts, which is really much more what like the Fabian socialists are like, is
mhm.
like they're like we're just I don't know, like it makes sense. It makes sense. Like she's much more like coded as like British Empire than Kaido. Kaido is much more coded as like a despot in the sense of like a military despotism.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I always the key thing for me about like Whole Cake Island is like the ultimate like treasure that she has really is like the film industry.
Yeah,
Is like
pudding.
this the yeah, putting the memory editing and like the like ability to like interpret the past, which it's not even clear whether or not she'll be able to on a certain level. Um, but yeah, like pudding is like her
It's
most
also
powerful asset.
what's also great about Oda's writing is that he makes all of even the most evil characters very sympathetic. Because Big Mom's backstory is like one of the saddest ones, like leading up to
Yeah,
all of it, and it's really about like the Catholic Church ultimately, because
yeah,
it's she's
Carmel.
quite she's quite explicitly raised by like a cat like in Catholic garb, a Catholic orphanage, etc. And she like thinks of this as being like the ultimate good, but she doesn't even know that she was being raised in a slave colony like by child traffickers. But like that's
Well, and it was like the way that they like made their way into like the Nordic Isles was by like this very overt like psyop. This like literally like false flag of like executing the giants, and then she's like, "You will not kill my people."
yeah,
Like her,
yeah.
Carmel putting her hands up at the execution stand. Um, it's ridiculous. I love Whole Cake Island so
Whole Cake
much.
Island
It's
is one of the best parts because what I
I think
really
it's
like
the best part.
I think in terms of like because a lot of the times like Oda's like it's like everything is like he just organizes all these pieces, and it's like, okay, now here's like the final battle, which is going to take like a year to draw, and
Yeah, let's just flick
there's
the
like multiple
domino.
layers happening in the battle at all times. Like everyone has to split up, everyone has to sort of accomplish some vital role in the battle, etc. Like like Sanji has his like lesson that he learns in Wano in the battle, etc., etc. But what's so great about the Whole Cake Island one is that it's like they show up, and the gangster character is like, oh, we already have this plot to like do this, but then the plot, so it's like, okay, like is this going to be a quick like story arc, like is he just like it seemed to me when I was first reading it, I was like, oh, I guess Oda didn't want to like do this whole rigmarole of like setting up all the pieces and having them fall. Instead, it's like that you show up and the pieces are all set up, and then everything falls in the wrong way, and it's just a giant mess, which is way more interesting than some of the other things where like building the plot that will eventually fail and then have to be fixed. is like half of the story. In Whole Cake Island, it's like here's the plot, and what's so beautiful is that it all goes awry because like Sanji is like such a good person, and that
Yeah.
that it like that that it like short circuits someone's like evil logic, like it's amazing.
Yeah, I think Sanji is sort of like his ultimate little self-insert. He's like the most like sort of like human character in the entire story on a certain level.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's true. I think that's true. He's definitely, yeah, he's also like meant to be like, I mean, obviously like the reason why you and so many others like Sanji so much is because he's like the most relatable of the male protagonists, especially because it's like
yeah,
Luffy is like, he's like a chosen figure, you know what I mean? He's like
a
different.
retard god.
He's like better
Like,
than all of us, but also, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And like Zoro is like kind of like a male fantasy of being like, man, I wish I was that badass, But
yeah.
like
It's like,
of like
dude,
ultimate
I swing
discipline,
rocks. Yeah.
ultimate discipline. Like he's like the most disciplined, like the most like you could say principled in that sense of like being self-disciplined and things like that. But Sanji is just like a dude who like loves life, like he just loves like things, like loves food, loves women, etc., whereas like
Yeah.
no one else really like has desires in the same way like that.
Yeah, his desire is basically like I want to try all of the fish in the world. Isn't that so beautiful? Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
my dream is to find somewhere I don't know if it exists, but yeah, I love him so much. I mean, he's also the one on the crew that seems to be like most in dialectic with Luffy. Like they're very much two sides of the same coin, like most directly out of everyone else on the crew. Um,
yeah. It's
the
just
the
that Luffy
one and
has
the
no
three.
desires in a way, which is like constantly used in the story where he has like he's like people say he's like asexual, like in the sense that he's the only one who can survive like the Tiger Lily Island because he just like doesn't
Yeah,
care. And
yeah.
like what's funny is that that makes him the most desirable of all of the men in the world is that he just like literally doesn't give a fuck at all. He's on the Sigma grind set or whatever people say.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's interesting that like he sort of sets up pairings for all of them too, despite like really avoiding a lot of the romance. Like most of the male crew members have a sort of OTP, once we're getting towards this final saga. Like Zoro's got his samurai wife, Sanji's got his three-eyed film girl, and then Chopper even has his like reindeer mink.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, it's pretty good. I just realized like like mink fur is like the most valuable like fur for fur trade or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's funny. Um,
Yeah, I think it is funny that he like introduced like furries, like or like the anthropological like these like these figures like so late into it is kind of funny.
yeah, yeah. Um, I can't think of like their earliest appearance, but I'm pretty. They appear earlier. Oh, it's Beppo. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The polar bear guy.
No, like there's always like one or two of them of like anything that's introduced later, like earlier on, where it's just like
Yeah,
not drawn attention to. Like even Pudding shows up like way earlier,
yeah.
and yeah, it's a there. I don't know. It's such a. I could talk about One Piece for forever. I'm trying to think about like what things I really wanted to talk about it. Um,
I
I
like
don't
the
know.
Operation Paperclip stuff of Whole Cake Island. Been talking about that for a while.
Oh, I
It's
mean, so much oh, one thing that's really funny if we're talking about Sanji stuff is like Germa 66 is being like the antagonist in like the world government's comic book
comic
in
book.
the
Yeah,
universe, where it's like literally that's how like it's Oda making fun of how the Nazis are still used to this day, like as this like perpetual antagonist, despite the fact that they've like don't really exist anymore, like they don't have the power they used to have, like they're just kind of like they're equally like they're capable of being suckered by Whole Cake Island, etc. Like
yeah.
being used instrumentalized for these various things.
Well,
Um,
and the head Vinsmoke judge is like, he's like, I didn't think it was gonna turn out like this. He's like revealed to be like basically like a retarded child at the tea party, like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
entirely suckered.
Well, that's exactly what happened to Adolf Hitler with the British royals. He was like, "Wait, I thought you guys were all on my fucking side." Like that's really what happened. Because like the
Yeah.
British royals, like a lot of the people, like they're pretty down. They're pretty into it. That's what like we don't really talk about it that much anymore. But it wasn't like like British people, subjects of the British Isles in general, were big fans of the Nazis. A lot of the aristocrats were more than anyone else. And then like after the fact, they were like, "Yo, what are you talking about? We never did that. Like, what do you mean?" It's just kind of forgotten. Um, Same way, same thing, same exact thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, the other aspect is they're like sort of like a roving nation without like a homeland. So it's like sort of like the
Yeah,
Argentina myth.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's he's very thorough. It's like very it's very like humbling to see sort of like exactly how thorough he ends up being with all of that stuff.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
really think of anything in particular, like world historically, that isn't reflected in some way in One Piece.
I mean, the
Like
Nordic
Native
fascination.
Americans, like the Vikings are there. Like you've got all of the various all of the various things are all there. They're all like I guess I don't know. It's like sort of like where will he go next? Like obviously Elbath is set up to be like the land of the giants. Will be the next major arc after Egghead is finished, and I think that like that sort of is completing the parallelism of like the giants are one of the first things set up like very early on in
Oh yeah.
Little Garden. So I feel like it's like you can see like Oda announced what like a year ago that like we're entering the end game of the whole story.
And he called
um,
it a battle royale directly.
Well, it's like the battle royale has existed as a principle in One Piece like multiple times. It's like an
Of
organized.
course.
It is the organizing principle of this hegemony, which is like even reflected in like media. Like the battle royale as a genre of video games is really popular for a reason. So are like the like things like Squid Game and things like that, all coming from like the story, the most dangerous game, which has
Yeah.
influenced all of these other things. But there's a multiple times in One Piece that this battle royale, like survival of the fittest tournament, happens or is like held, and it's like that's what has to ultimately be overcome. Like many times, it's not just like Dressrosa. It happens in Skypiea. It happens all over the place.
I can only think of God Valley, Dressrosa, Skypiea.
Oh yeah, God
Um,
Valley also. Yeah.
yeah. But it's yeah, I don't know. It's just so beautiful. Like every time I reread a chapter, I find some sort of like new connection or inversion. It's like very like it's like so interconnected. It's I mean, you could make that like little Bible chart of the like sort of cross referencing, just like with the visual
Yeah,
language. It's really beautiful. Um, I don't
I
know.
also don't think like when I talk about like One Piece as being like Christian, I don't mean it in like some sort of like doctrinal evangelical sense where it's like, oh,
Oh, of
Oda is
course.
literally a Christian or whatever. But I would say it spiritually is because of the way that he deploys the symbolism is completely in accord with the way the Bible like uses the same symbolism and like its meaning. Like there's even like I was thinking like the most heavy-handed instance of this is the Lord Yahweh.
Yeah.
Being crucified, um, like literally in Wano. Like that's like the most on the nose use of it. But that's also a reference to like the Edo period in Japan when the Japanese government was literally crucifying Christians as a in a way to like as like a terror campaign, being like, oh, okay, you guys worship this crucified. Like the Japanese didn't really crucify people until the introduction of Christianity. Um, so like and like Wano is very much based off of that time period in Japan, um, because it's all about opening up the
Yeah.
to the world.
Yeah, I mean the other instance of that that I can think of is the Fishman Island where they have them step on the picture of Queen Otohime,
Yeah,
which the Japanese did directly with like images of Christ to
yeah.
Christian.
So it's
Um,
like a big thing that a lot of Japanese media does is it tries to take like the island. Like Japan also is like comes to represent like the world in the sense that Japan is an archipelago,
Yeah.
and like the world is an archipelago. So in the same way that like James Joyce would take Ireland to like be representative of the world, and like Ireland being split into these four quadrants, like the four kingdoms in Ireland and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, like Oda does the same thing, like where he like is using what he most directly knows, like Japanese history and surroundings and things like that, but also like his massive reading regimen, like his interest in world cultures and all these things. Putting all those together, it's like that's how you get One Piece. It's like the same. I would say it's like the same basic premise as what put together like James Joyce's work with regard to Ireland. And like there's just as much of like, if you're talking about Nordic characters and stuff like that, there's a ton of Vikings obviously
Hmm.
in One Piece. But that's like one of the major things in James Joyce's work is like his obsession with Nordic culture, like he Ibsen and the Viking invasions of Ireland and things like that. I see
Well,
a lot of parallels between these like the like and like the type of like comedy, the type of like highbrow, lowbrow, whatever people want to say, postmodern. It's just a good storytelling. Um,
yeah, I mean, Blake does the same thing with Jerusalem and the
yeah, of
and all
course,
of
of
his
course.
influence from what is it, the Eddas. Um, it's great. I mean, one of my favorite metaphors in the entire series is Wano as a bowl of Odin itself.
Yeah.
Um, which I mean, I don't know. There's so many like sort of novel metaphors in a way.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, it's like there's also like a ton of just like these oblique references to like other sailing epics. Like obviously, if you're going to look at a genre of literature that Oda would probably be the most interested in is other sailing epics. So like Gulliver's Travels is like a massive influence
oh yeah.
on One Piece. Like the Shandians are directly named after the island in the sky in Gulliver's Travels. But it's like this isn't a unique thing for Oda either. It's like that's where the whole notion of Castle in the Sky by Miyazaki comes from, like so many other
Yeah.
things. Um, like yeah, I just think like for like if you wanted to really improve the literacy rate and improve the culture of America, of like American teenage boys, etc., like give them something like really good to read. Like the only thing you can give them is like manga and like anime. That's never really a concern for people these days. Like where like the whole concern is like, well, how do we get girls into this, or like how do we be more inclusive into this? But if you're talking about culture explicitly for like teenage boys, they've been effectively abandoned by the Western media environment. Like appealing to adolescent teenage boys is considered like the worst thing you could possibly do. Like
Yeah.
because like
Well,
adolescent teenage boys are sexist, and things like that. That's like the whole so you have like this situation now where you have like male feminists being like I'm gonna retrain adolescent boys to have like progressive values or whatever, and they're not doing this through like Vinland Saga like the Japanese are, or like something like Attack on Titan or One Piece or something
mhm.
like that. They're doing it by like making the dialogue in video games like insufferable, or I don't know, like that's they're like what really exists. Like I don't know, I grew up in a time where there was actually a lot of culture, most of it Japanese, being presented to me as an adolescent teenage boy, which made me feel like reading was cool, or like caring about these things was like fine or cool, like it wasn't like a girly thing or something. But I feel like with the abandonment of that, like it's kind of like like that's why literacy rates are much higher for women than men now when
Mhm.
in America, is because like men aren't going to read this trash. They're like it's not appealing to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and there's an entire racket of like YA written for millennial women basically.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
like exactly. Like there's it's just like a market that's not even sought out. It's not sought out at all. But where it is sought out is like in rap music and things like that. Like you've got like, but like like the closest thing that you have is like I don't know, like my friends were all like jocks for the most part in high school, and they all liked anime. Like they would
Yeah.
read mangas. Like if you gave them comic books, they would read them. That's what people are going to be interested in. So like if you look at like our like curriculum in public schools and things like that, why wouldn't you just give
Just teach One Piece.
boys One Piece? Like you could literally teach anything, anything you wanted out of that. Like you
Yeah,
could
you
use
could
it as
literally like
like
grade 1 through 12 just do One Piece the whole time, kind of.
yeah, like straight
It's
up
really
though.
beautiful. No,
And it's like
I'm trust me.
it's really, and it's like the thing is that it's like where this genre, like when I compare it to something like the Fairy Queen, it's like why does the Fairy Queen exist? Why did Spencer write it? Why did the Elizabethan state give him money to write the Fairy Queen? Is because it was like a part of this genre of literature to teach like chivalrous values to like young men who would become courtiers, etc. So it's like
Yeah.
what and like they were reading, these stories of like knights and things like that. That is like what teenage boys particularly want to read about. They want to read these types of romances in
Yeah,
the Phrygian sense.
we get I was taught a comic book when I was in high school, and it was fucking Persepolis, which is just like, immigrant story auto
Yeah,
fiction.
it's a memoir. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Um,
women love memoirs. I remember being in junior high, and girls would read that book called "A Child Called It" or whatever. It's like a true crime like story of like being abused as a child or whatever. Like that's not a
yeah, yeah,
genre
yeah.
that appeals to men or boys for the most part. Boys want to read a
No.
story about a guy who can punch really good and is things like that. And the Japanese don't have any shame in supplying those things because they don't have the sort of cultural fixations on stuff like this the way that we do. So like, and
Yeah,
I honestly, it just ends up translating over here anyway. So it's like, okay, like all that you've accomplished is you just destroyed like the base of Western literature in the sense of like writing these things for teenage boys was like how even like most major writers would get their start, or like this is like the genre that they worked within. Like if you're talking about like Philip K. Dick or someone like that, people who would like later
hmm
be recognized as like literary geniuses or whatever, they were writing in like pulp magazines, like westerns, stuff like this, like sci-fi stories. They're primarily the audience is primarily teenage boys, like, and um, we have like an anxiety around that fact that doesn't exist in Japan. Like in Japan, there's like a ton of comics that are more directed towards like female audiences and things like that, but they aren't the same. Like they're not in the same genre. They are serving different purposes.
yeah. They get like little court romances, sort of. It's like the whole shojo genre is like very different than shonen on a lot of levels, but everything's got to be for everybody, and it just gets flattened into sort of this like Steven Universe goop. Um,
Yeah.
it's yeah. I
Whereas like
mean,
so then what actually ends up happening though is that like I drive around and I see people with like One Piece and Naruto and Dragon Ball Z bumper stickers, and it's like okay, like
I
those
literally
used to
see one
be
every day.
like for Gen Xers and things like that, it would be like you could still read X-Men or Batman comics or any of these things, and they would still have something to say to you. I mean, even when I was growing up, I had Batman the animated series, Batman Beyond. Like those are like beautiful works of art, like still to this day on like every level.
Yeah,
On like every level, they're just as good as any of the things that are coming out like that. But like I was gonna watch the new Spider-Man movie, the what Spider-Man Multiverse 2 or whatever the fuck, and
yeah,
already in like the first like 5 minutes, like the girl, like there's like introducing a girl who's like, I play the drums and I'm mad and I have my head shaved, and it's like, what does this have? Like, why? Like, uh how is this like a Spider-Man comic? Like, Spider-Man is about being a teenage boy, like that's what it's about at its base level. Like that's the whole appeal of
yeah,
it. Like that's the whole identity of the character. Like the same is true of like One Piece. Like Luffy could not be a teenage girl. The story wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't work.
yeah. No, not at all. It doesn't make any sense if he's a girl. Um, I mean, and, the feminine characters in One Piece have like very different interests,
Yeah, and like they're
and it's like
just as
very very
heroic.
different.
They just that there's like just as much of a diversity in depictions of women in One Piece as there is in anything else. It's just not the central focus.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. It's yeah, I mean, back to the visual gags. I don't know. One of my favorite visual gags is the is like the sort of drum beat hip sway of I forget which Baroque works one, but it's the one that faces Nami. It does one panel where she like moves her big wide hips to the right and then moves them to the left, and she's just shaking her ass. It's so funny. Uh,
There's lots
I
of
don't know.
great stuff like that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. One Piece is so funny,
I
but
was I'm just thinking like more in like terms of like what it says about the world that One Piece is like so popular and so big across the world, and in a way that like used to be true for things like Spider-Man or the X-Men or like Batman or these other like very explicitly like American created um, supernatural romances, you could even say, but really they're just more like classical like romances in the style of the fact that the characters are kind of like demigods in the sense that they are like they're like us, but they have some differentiating power in the world that we don't have. Like a lot of the times, like the sort of TV tropes understanding of this is like, oh, it's like a power fantasy. It's a fantasy of like having power, but it's not really about that. It's more about like having responsibilities, like
Mhm.
having responsibilities put on you as you get older, like as you go through adolescence and you enter your adulthood. That's really what these stories are all about. Like same thing with like Luffy, like he doesn't have any responsibilities. He's loaded with responsibilities as he becomes responsible for everyone in the world. Like that's the incremental like story that is being unfolded, is like Luffy taking on the burden of more and more of like society, to the point where it's like the whole globe is like riding on his back, and he has to have like the ethic and like the he has to like manage that, you know what I mean? Like that's the whole point of a romance, is this this education into adulthood, and that's why they're like young adult stories, and that's why they're targeted and they appeal to that audience. It's just that so it's like people are seek out these narratives because they perform a function, like psychologically even, you
Mhm.
could say. They do teach lessons. Like people get tattoos of these things because they mean as much to them as people getting like crucifix tattoos, etc. Like
Yeah,
they like
I've seen nothing happen to tattoos and stuff like that for obvious similar reasons, right?
yeah, yeah. And so I just think like you could say that the fact that all of the most popular one like stories in this genre are coming out of Japan now, I feel like that just means that like the cultural, like that Americans like aren't like the industries involved in entertainment or whatever, however you want to put it, literally have nothing to say or have like abandoned their responsibility to this entire demographic. And like that doesn't mean that these people aren't going to have these stories or find them anywhere. They're just not going to
Mhm.
find them here. Like they're going to go read Naruto.
Yeah, I mean, what's like the equivalent would be like something like Hunger Games, and like what you get is like teary-eyed like moralizing like lectures basically. Um,
Well, I think it's because like they're like we actually take these stories very seriously on like a lot of
mhm.
levels. Like like Harry Potter was the last really big one, right? Like Harry Potter, but Harry Potter ended up appealing primarily to like the Hermione characters in the work, which is like the real self insert of the writer, etc.
Yeah,
Um, so like Harry Potter is very influential for that reason, but it's also like you can see how J.K. Rowling's managed her own fan base in this time period or whatever. It's like it's not it failed at its job. Like it's not like there's a bunch of young boys who are going to be wanting to read Harry Potter going forward. Like
it's
it's
gonna
not
die
for
out.
them.
Yeah.
It's not
No, I
for
mean,
them at all.
no, no, no. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that the main demographic for Harry Potter was young girls. Everyone I knew who was really into Harry Potter was a girl.
I mean,
My
I
little
read them
sister.
and I was into them, but it wasn't like the same way that I was into other young adult franchises or whatever that are around at the same time. It was just kind of like
everyone was reading them, and I was like, I'll read it. Like I was a
Yeah.
voracious reader, so like I was like, oh, everyone's reading these, I'll read those too. It's not like, but there was also like Aragon and things like that, which were like very explicitly like just a retelling of Star Wars through the lens of Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was extremely popular at the time because it serves the same function. Like Lord of the Rings served this function of like, it's basically a young adult tale for like, it's like Frodo is sort of that figure, like whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember when I read Harry Potter, I read like Scott Pilgrim around the same time. Um, and it's, I do think something like that is going to end up having more longevity in a sense. But yeah, I don't know.
I just like think of that's just at least how I see how things have actually shaken out. Like if you're going to talk about some work of art that is like very formative for men, young men in our society, it's going to be something like One Piece or
Yeah,
Dragon Ball Z or
or
something like that,
Naruto.
like
Yeah.
or Naruto. Like it's not really there's not really competition against the Japanese on that front. So then, like, I don't know. What does that say? What is that? Why is that? I think that's one of the biggest changes that's happened culturally since in my lifetime anyway. Because when I was a kid, I remember like South Park episodes making fun of the Pokemon obsession. Because like the
Yeah.
Gen Xers, like the older generations, like they were so weirded out by the fact that all of this like Asian culture, etc., had become so popular with the younger generation, like Yu-Gi-Oh and Beyblades and all like pretty much all of the things that like
Yeah, all the
culturally,
collectibles, Bakugan, yeah.
like all of those things, like they're like Power Rangers, like all of those things were so formative for like me as a child growing up. And like then there was also sort of like an addendum. There's also like oh yeah, it's like you sort of had to like seek out like Batman or something as a kid because it wasn't
Mhm.
like as culturally dominant as these other things. Like I woke
You
up
have to go to the specialty shop.
on the weekends, I woke up every morning so that I could watch like Pokemon. Like I would wait like in front of the TV and watch infomercials at like 5 a.m. until like those things came on because that's how much they meant to me. Like you know what I mean? Cause and like
Hmm.
is about like something relatable in the sense of like I wanted to be Ash Ketchum or whatever. Like that was what it was. I guess like I don't know if that exists anymore. Like I don't know where all that where that like who like it's kind of like the hardest demographic to be responsible for, right? Like because you're basically it's like being like who's going to be in charge of like educating or like the morals of like the next generation of boys, like is like one of the most basic political questions even, right? Like that's why they killed Socrates, is because he was corrupting the youth by altering the educational program of like young boys. But that's really like really, I think you could do a lot worse than One Piece. I don't know if you can do better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the a lot worse ends up being, like political Twitch streamers or really like these like YouTube fandoms, because they're like so centered around like a person. They're just like rife for, what ends up just being like different kinds of abuse.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, there's no stories of Oda like fucking sexually abusing his fans or like trying to
the,
get
the the
dates from
worst
fans or
thing
whatever.
was like one of his coworkers, like the Rurin Intention guy, like a samurai mangaka, like they found child porn on his computer and then he like went to jail. And like Oda was friends with him, and that's like the most damning thing against Oda.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing though is that like there's like the people like you have to think like what kind of person wants to do that, you know what I mean? Like that's why there's like so
Yeah.
many that's why there's so many like predators amongst like priests, especially like youth pastors and like coaches for sport. Like it's always like it's really people have a lot, like that's also why like there's not that many male public school teachers anymore, or like that's been trending away from that because it's like it's a position that's like we are very paranoid about because like almost no one is trusted to be able to do it in what's considered like a correct manner.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, so really, no one's taking up the mantle to like educate the youth whatsoever. And it just comes so far outside of it just all the way outside the country in Japan, really.
Yeah, you
Um,
have to like watch Japanese cartoons in order to to find
yeah,
that.
I mean, there's like a similar voraciousness for, like the next episode, really, for One Piece. I mean, literally, it trends every week,
Yeah,
for both the episode and the chapter. Um, I mean, there's nothing else like matching it as far as like the week to week, like just like hunger for it. Um, it's I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I've never experienced anything like it really, like nowhere close to it.
yeah. I can't think of. I mean, the closest I could say would probably be like in the earlier days of Prestige TV,
Sure.
the sort of week to week people's like Lost. When Lost was first on, it had this sort of this massive cultural purchase that like everyone, like I don't know, everyone was at least everyone I knew cared a lot about what happened on Lost every week, and you'd be writing on forums and analyzing what it meant and all of that. Um, I don't know what else. Game of Thrones kind of had that level of
Yeah.
cultural purchase for a while, but it completely failed. Like in the end, now it's
Yeah,
like
and
kind of
the author
forgotten.
won't even finish it,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Um,
I there's not really like it's kind of like of geopolitical importance in a way to like have a thing to be capable of producing things like this because it really does bring people together in a way that nothing else can. To have like people following the same story, um, and like it's like how you produce a community in a way.
yeah, I mean, it's very useful having like the same story amongst people and being able to like explain things through this. You know what I mean? I can't, I'm sure there's tons of discussions among young boys of like, yeah, you got to be like Zorro. You just gotta,
Yeah.
nothing happened, stuff like that.
I mean, do you know
Um,
how much like people? Well, I mean, the Dragon Ball Z references are still to this day like very important. Like if you go to the gym in Podunk Town anywhere in America, you'll find dudes in like Vegeta t-shirts or whatever,
yeah,
like
yeah.
at the gym. Like this is like a big deal.
No, absolutely. It's I mean, that's like sort of the mantle that the Beach Boys were trying to take up, trying to tell people to eat their vegetables. Um, it's I mean, I do think it's like of like huge importance, and people sort of laugh it off, but it's I mean, like the alternative would be, these like children's properties that then just get co-opted into like into pornography. Um,
Yeah,
and it's pretty bad. I mean, I don't think it's good that like I mean, I think like a lot of young boys, their like first exposure to pornography is like some IP that they're associated with.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, it's almost impossible to go on the internet if you were like Googling any sort of character in a child media franchise or like young adult media franchise without immediately being brought into that. Like even like Fortnite characters or whatever, right? Or like even there's like
yeah,
Minecraft pornography and things like this, or
anything with
like
a 3D
Five
model.
Nights at Freddy's or whatever. It's also extremely weird that Five Nights at Freddy's has kind of this cultural purchase. Like,
Yeah,
Japan creates One Piece and we create Five Nights at Freddy's, which is fucking what does that
yeah,
say?
yeah. It's like, oh man, the early 2000s were scary.
Well, it's like
Chuck
Five
E.
Nights at
Cheese was
Freddy's
scary.
it's really like, okay, so America is like a broken down theme park which is haunted by the ghosts of abused children and you have to stay awake and
Yeah,
be vigilant because they're coming for
always
you.
vigilant. Yeah.
That's like what the most the biggest like child media franchise here. That's like the lesson that it's teaching. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the Skibbity toilet discourse as well.
I mean, that's such a weird fucking thing. But it's like think about
Yeah.
how like low rent that is, like low effort, low quality compared to fucking
Oh
One
yeah.
Piece. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Nothing like literally nothing compares to the like amount of effort that like One Piece gets put into it. Because all of these none of these like TV shows have like a central like I mean none of them have the Pirate King like Oda where it's just like he's cracking the whip on everyone for the entire franchise. I mean, like I guess you have Feige or whatever, but that's nowhere near the same level, really.
Yeah, and that stuff is like mostly like mining the last or like what they did to Star Wars, etc. Like these
Yeah.
things have a lot of cultural purchase, and they like remain that way for people's whole lives, right? Like the reason why Star Wars is that big is because the main audience for Star Wars are like 40-year-old, 50-year-old dudes with like 10-year-old kids or whatever at this point. Like
Yeah.
those are the people who care about Star Wars, and it's like something that they wanted to pass down to their kids. Like I know people like that, big Star Wars fans who are like, and their kids don't really give a shit in the same way because
No, that was
it doesn't mean
exactly my
anything to them.
experience. My dad worked on the movie Fanboys and like got me a bunch of the props for Christmas. Like he got me like all of the Star Wars posters from the movie. So I had these like gigantic Star Wars posters in my bedroom for a long time. But
Yeah.
it doesn't, it can't sustain itself because there's just nothing like, I mean, there's just not that much there. I mean, there's like six decent movies, I guess.
Well, it's like it carried on because of like the prequel trilogy was actually good. I don't know,
Yeah.
people have issues with that or whatever, and they had like the Clone Wars TV show or whatever, and like the video games. That's what kept it alive for a while. But then when they were like, oh, we're gonna bring it back to movies again, they kind of destroyed the ability for it to have like a kind of cohesive. They split the fandom, you might say, like a million times, and now it's just
Yeah.
kind of like it's just like we that's why we have like all these multiverse things because it's like you can't just have something be for a specific audience. Like you can't just have Spider-Man be for teenage boys. Like you have to have a Spider-Man for everyone. Like we have this that's partially why I think we can't like One Piece is never going to have like, oh, we're going to like this part's for this person, this part's for this person. Its primary audience is like teenage boys. Like it always will be. Um, it's that doesn't mean that it's like exhausted of all like literary potential or whatever. It's just that
Hmm.
that is the primary demographic who will read One Piece like forever. Like it's just is what it is. There's not going to be a One Piece spin-off that's like One Piece for girls and it's like the same story except with girls doing it. It just like that it would be purposeless. But that's what we do here where it's like, oh, like we have Spider-Man, so now we're gonna have Spider Girl movie or whatever the fuck. And it's like that's still gonna end up appealing because of the way the storytelling is going to end up appealing primarily to teenage boys just because that's like what the story is for. It's like designed for them, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's why it exists. um we like that's like our issue is that we can't allow like things just to be what they are. Like you can't just be like, well, Batman is ultimately like a story that's about like that's directed at like male audiences or whatever. It's like no, we need everyone to it needs to be for everyone. So how do we make
Yeah,
it for
you need to have
everyone?
all races at the same table at eye level,
Yeah. It's the big momification of
of
of it all.
everything. Yeah, I mean, it just gets flattened into like sweet goo, where which is basically just pornography. Um,
Smut, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's awful. But I think that's why like One Piece, like I don't know, it was very nice for me to read One Piece. It's just like kind of refreshing, because it's like I enjoy it in the way that I enjoy reading like Marty or like and Marty that was who is for like like who's Melville and Williams
yeah,
for these like adventurous stories about sailing on the sea and like etc. It's primarily for like young boys like that like as readers like that's who was reading it like that's who it appealed to like that's the case for a lot of literature and if that audience is abandoned then literature still exists it's just not for it's like you have different genres become more prevalent more popular and that happened in my own lifetime when it was like you went from like Harry Potter and they realized that most of the people reading Harry Potter were teenage girls and so then you get move on to like Twilight the Hunger Games and all that.
yeah. I mean, and I mean, you know the history of the Hunger Games. It was literally like an organized marketing psyop where they made fake Tumblr accounts. Like
Yeah.
it's One
Also, it's
Piece
based off
has.
of off of department like the author Suzanne Collins. Her father was like a Psy war officer in like the Department of Defense or something like that, if I
Yeah,
recall
yeah,
correctly.
yeah. Well, I mean, and Shonen Jump itself is sort of a brutal battle royale. Like, I don't know if you know how the rankings work, but if
Yeah,
you fall under a certain ranking, it doesn't matter how long your story is, you get canned.
yeah.
Um, your like authorial purchase doesn't matter. There's been plenty of people who write a very successful shonen manga. It ends, their sequel gets like somewhat automatically approved, and then it gets canceled within like the first 2-3 volumes, and they just get on.
I think that it has a lot to do with the fact that there's not really like we have a cultural acceptance of like this notion of like female spaces or whatever, right? Where well, I mean, I don't know, that's kind of getting fucked up these days. But the notion that it's like, oh, like girls can have their clubs where like they do things that just primarily appeal to themselves, etc. Like like, and I think that's fine, And the
Yeah,
whole reason those exist is because there were already male clubs doing those things. But now it's like basically illegal for like things to just be like, oh, this is like only for guys. Like this is just a guy's thing. Like don't worry about it. It's just like it's not for you. You know what I mean? Like it's literally like against the law. Like
yeah.
this like
You
Title
gotta get the
IX money.
girlies. You gotta get the girlies at the D&D table. It's like this whole
Yeah, and if you
it's like this
don't,
whole Gen X fantasy of like having the having the nerdy cute girl take off her glasses, and whoa, she plays Magic the Gathering and she's cute. Um,
yeah, and it's like I just don't get it. That's why like the last like that's like been a huge part of like the culture wars or whatever, and like the whole reason Jordan Peterson even exists is for like just describing the fact that like you if you just abandon young men and you don't have like any like cultural zones for them to exist in and to like mature in this way, then you just leave them open to like just being totally like psychologically destroyed, like because you need those things, like you need as a teenage boy especially, like you need like some types of like narrative that appeals to you on any level really, and is like seeking to effectively teach you the lessons of like coming into maturity. Like it's such a basic element of human society that it goes back to like the cavemen. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's like it's just like so basic. Like women obviously also have these things, but they're not the same thing. Like you can't be like, oh, these are both like we're just gonna do the same thing for everyone. Like it just doesn't work like that.
yeah. I mean, and like what ends up happening is you just get these like little political fandoms, and it just ends up being like navel gazing to like explain like their own like social standing essentially. Like I've seen multiple threads on here where it's like the Marxist perspective on being an incel or something, and it's basically just like all of these like little political fandoms always end up sort
Well,
of
like
at
what
that
is an
point.
incel? What is an incel?
True,
Like everyone talks about this, but what it is like a boy who has not matured. Like it's just a boy in
it's an
an adult
adolescent.
body. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just like that's what it is. Like that's the same thing.
yeah.
It's literally so it's like if you're talking about this issue, it's like okay, well, how do you solve that issue? It's like, oh, how about we like
Tell them
alienate
stories to make them grow
and
up.
yeah, well, no, you can't do that because that would be bad. So what you do instead is you just further alienate and shame them until like they decide to become women or something, which happens quite frequently
Yeah,
actually.
very frequently.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's either like become a woman or explode, uh, basically.
yeah, because there's not really
Yeah.
any alternative. There's not like then like so then and there's like all this paranoia around like any attempt to organize to like be like okay like this is like a boy like you're like this is for boys or whatever like we like and like like you just, and obviously like there's reasons for that paranoia because there's a lot of like abuse that happens in those circles too as
Sure.
well, like obviously, but like someone's got to like thank God for the Japanese, I suppose. Oda's carrying everyone's fucking weight here because
Yeah.
I see if I see a dude with a One Piece thing out in the wild, it's like they're usually doing pretty good for them. Like it doesn't like this irony is like oh like that's like so adolescent to like One Piece or something as an adult. It's like not really like that's like it's actually like very like especially like read chapter 10 read this latest arc and tell me this is like adolescent or something, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
it's brutal. It's like a
No, it's
real
entirely
grappling with
brutal.
like the hardest like truths of the world and like how to hold up under that. Like Kuma, I think is like such a great character for just that. It's like an unimaginable amount of patience and virtue in that character, like such an unfathomable amount of it. And it's like so compelling as something to read. Like it really moves people, and like and moving people on that level is actually like informative. Like it actually changes how it like changes people's minds about things, even not even if it's like just like an argument by facts and logic, but through like
Yeah.
not even like persuasion by means of seduction, but just by like holding up a representation of a thing, you know, just like that's good enough on its own. That's the whole point of that's like literally why Jesus is like, no, I have to be crucified because I have to be held up as like a representation, like in the way the snake was held up in like the desert. Like
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
like this is like the most basic form of education. It's like something that's like painful to see, like, and in order for it to like be, um, to like actually work, it's like you have to like be enthralled by it in a way. Like you can't just be like, oh, like look at all these tragic pictures of things like, oh, tragedy, tragedy, tragedy. It's like it
Yeah.
has to be allied to um, a positive message, like in the sense of like Luffy's like seeking to liberate the like it's well, you couldn't do better than One Piece. Like that's the reason why it is so important and will remain important until it ends.
Yeah. I mean, completely correct. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was getting choked up reading Whole Cake Island. I mean, it like really gets me genuinely. Um, and I mean, I mean, usually it's the Sanji stuff for me, but it's like, but it's like, I mean, he just like takes abuse from these, like in Dressrosa, and he just has complete faith that this woman is like being abused, and needs his help, and like just takes all of her abuse, despite that, and
Yeah,
it's
Sanji has
beautiful.
that great lie about like a gentleman doesn't call a woman out on her lies or something like that, which is like,
No, a
oh,
gentleman
forgives a woman for,
forgives. Yes,
yeah,
yeah. No,
yeah,
I love that, and it's referring to Nico Robin, who is like one of the most abused characters in the entire story. And it really comes down to like, like any Slavi in Water Seven really comes down to like sort of like a faith in the good, like despite the fall. You know,
yeah.
um,
Like
it's
I
really beautiful.
obviously I like Kuma a lot because I just love like it's such a great character to be like his whole thing is like from the very beginning of his like backstory is that he's like bigger because he's like a buccaneer, and so he's
Yeah,
like, oh, I can just absorb a lot of like
Sins.
violence that might hit other people, so I'll just be in the way. Like he's not and he doesn't actively do anything. He is like that's why like the clone versions are called pacifistas because he doesn't actively engage in any assertive violence. He's like solely a human shield with a giant target on his chest where he's like,
Yeah,
I will absorb all of like that's like a great male role model, like honestly.
yeah,
Like I was getting worked up on the latest chapter because it's like got him with Bonnie like stacking
yeah,
blocks on the ground, and I was like, I do that every morning, like
yeah,
I get it. Like Oda also like is like maturing as he's writing it because it's like he starts off he's just like a single dude or whatever. Then he gets married, he has kids. He has like two daughters, I think. I think he has two daughters,
yeah, yeah,
and he's like a fucking man now. He's like 50. You know what I mean? Like he's
yeah.
and being able to see like his own mature like his own like that's how he's processed all of this. Like I think it's like a great thing. It's like a great role model to have if and like especially
Yeah, the
like
author himself, for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Like I just don't really know what else to like point people to. Like it's just nice. I think that other like if you're a man out there, you're a dude like me, and there's any like adolescent boy or whatever in your life, just get them into One Piece. Like you'll actually like change their lives probably
No,
for the
I've
better.
literally been trying so hard to do this. Like I know so many dudes who are just completely fucking lost, and I'm just like,
Watch
they're
One
not
Piece.
gonna read, they're not gonna read
Yeah, you can't
Dante.
just be like as much as I say like like just read the Bible. Like that's not realistic. That's not
Yeah,
gonna
no,
like you can't
they're
even
gonna
be
be
like, well, just read
lost.
Shakespeare. There, yeah. So it's like if you want to help these people out, you want to give them a very good roadmap from my fucking view of things. Anyway, just give them One Piece.
I mean, it's a travesty that it's not in every fucking like library. I mean, you can get it free anywhere, but it's it really like it's frustrating when people are you know don't really give it the shot, or they're or they can't read the comic book, but it's like it's so good. And it really is like explanatory, and I think that like even I think it's like really important to like witness like such a well organized work. Like I remember watching like Princess Mononoke as a kid, or reading like Watchmen as an adolescent, and it's like it is like revelatory in a sense to like see very clearly like, oh, this is like a super well structured thing, and like see the sort of beauty in that. And like I think One Piece does that because it like invites them in with the treasure hunt, like sort of hermeneutic.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. Like, I like care so much about like literature in this way that it's like I don't know. This is like I'm like Luffy in the way where it was like when I was younger I was like I'm gonna write like I just like stories. I like these things. Like I just knew what I wanted to do my whole life, and I was like I'm just gonna like that's like if there's anything I can advocate for, it's like this is it. This is like up there with it. Like I if like I've seen it like change people. Like the only reason I've even read it is because like I've seen other people like really like into it and whatever, and like they've been not just you, but like other people in my life have been huge
Yeah.
advocates and like get like and been super excited about the fact that I've gotten really into it. Um, I just I don't know what else, like if you want people to read and to become literate, like you need a roadmap to get there from 0 to 1, right? And I often like would recommend people, like, oh, if like you haven't really read stuff in a long time, like you don't want to just like jump into like a dense work of like postmodern fiction that's going to be like over your head or something, you know what I mean? But it's like you
Yeah.
need like an on ramp. That on ramp used to be comic books in America. Like Thomas Pynchon himself read a lot of comic books growing up. Like it's
Hmm.
super informative on his works. Like if you don't appreciate comics or animation at all, you can't really get all of the things that are going on in his works even. Um, so that's what I would say. It's like stuff like this is if you want more people to read, especially young men, you just give them One Piece. It's enthralling. Like it's not like eating your vegetables. It's fun.
No.
It's great.
Yeah, it goes down real easy, Um,
But it's also extremely like that's what's so amazing about like a great work of art is that it's like it's like, hey, do you want to fucking cry today? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
do you want to like uh think about how fucked up the world is and how we need a fucking global revolution? Like, do you want to like that's not really like the initial pitch. It's like, hey, this is just a fun story about pirates, like check it out. It sucks you in. That's what makes it so good.
Yeah, I mean, and you start getting like the real like initial conceit of things with like Arlong Park, and you really start seeing the sort of like I mean, like the abuse that's coming down, right? Like Nami's in debt. Like it's always like about like debts and like and like access to food really is what it always comes down to.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's like, and you can spend your whole life like investigating political economy, blah blah blah. But like at the end of the day, all of these things, all of these insights have to be like presented in a narrative form that is inspiring to people. I mean, even like the Bolshevik Revolution or the American Revolution wasn't inspired by philosophy or pamphlets of political rhetoric and argumentation. It was by a massive cultural edifice of like this type of literature. It was things like Pilgrim's Progress and stuff like that. It was things like um, in the
yeah, I mean,
Bolshevik Revolution, it was like Chernyshevsky and like Russian literature in general.
yeah, I mean, Pilgrim's Progress is one of my like always big recommends to people. I mean, I literally collect copies of it now. I love it so much. Like for me, it's like it's like Dante, Pilgrim's Progress, and One Piece. That's my little trinity of things. Um,
And
and it's
those are all for boys, honestly.
they're
Like
all the same
Dante,
thing.
like the thing is like I don't know, people don't want to admit the fact that a lot of literature like what is comes out of the tradition of writing like handbooks for the education of boys. Like
Yeah,
there's another tradition, like there are other traditions of literature that are like the same thing for women, but they're not the same thing. Like you wouldn't have an author who would write both. like men generally write better for male audiences, women generally write better for female audiences, and that's okay. Like, you know, we can
Yeah.
just accept that. Like, we can, they don't have to like shame people for not being on one side or the other or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I mean I mean you had a tweet about like divine comedy mindset, but it's like it really does pull you out of the, out of the lowest depths. It's these things are like very effective. I mean, I read One Piece when I was working like 16-hour days, And it was like I really couldn't do anything else after getting off work. I was too tired. All I could do was just like read some manga and literally just collapse. Um, I don't know. It's
It is.
it's the best thing ever right now, really.
I mean, it's I've been feeling a bit in a funk myself, and reading it has definitely made me feel a lot better. Like about things, I guess. Like, it makes me want to write more than I have in a while. Although at the same time, it makes me feel like I like there's nothing I could write that will like I don't have. I'm not gonna be. I can't write for 21 hours a day and do the types of
Yeah.
shit that Oda does, you know, like I just kind of like tip my hat at that, just being like, goddamn, like I couldn't do that. I don't think I could actually do that. Like it's a monumental feat.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no delusions. I'm definitely not gonna write One Piece, but I want to try and make like a solid fucking, Northrop Frye interpretation like video or something, just to like expose the sort of like audience to this type of like understanding, because
Yeah,
I think it's
because
important.
yeah, I guess that's the other question where it's like, well, like if you catch up, right, and you're just there and you're waiting, it's like, well, there are other things you could read too, you know, that are just as
Yeah,
good, like, you know, and it's like being able to, you like if that's like the I don't know, I'm coming to reading One Piece like after having read a bunch of shit, so I can appreciate on that level, but I feel like it works vice versa too, where it's like if you can read and appreciate One Piece, then you've already been trained to some degree to be able to appreciate a bunch of other works of literature that are available to you, you know?
I mean that's literally what I've done. I mean that's I didn't read shit prior to reading One Piece. I didn't read anything after high school, and then I read One Piece and Book of the New Sun, and that was it. Um,
Yeah, like Book of the New Sun's a great thing to point to right after that. Or it's like, you know, people talk about Berserk or like these other things, but again, like where really the comparisons you can make are like to like mid 20th century like speculative fiction in the West and like manga. Like those are the
yeah.
things that are like at that level.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if like people read One Piece and then went on to read like, Melville short stories or Moby Dick or Marty or,
Yeah.
I mean, even just getting into the poetry and stuff after that, it would be, it's much, I mean, I've read like three cantos of Clarel and I can see the vision, you know what I mean? Like you can sort
Yeah.
of see how these things are constructed in these very like ornate and beautiful ways, like especially being trained from One Piece. And it's like, I mean, I don't think anything is as good of a roadmap as One Piece is for like this type of understanding.
I mean,
Um,
it's because it takes so much from world literature in general
yeah,
that it has already made all of these connections and allusions to things, so that like when you if you choose to follow up on them, you it's like, you know, you could just be like read Gulliver's Travels, you know, like if you
yeah,
like One Piece, you can read that, and then you're like, oh wow, I like Jonathan, I like Swift, and you could read a bunch of Swiftian satires. Like, is there other stuff like this? And it's like, yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff like this, and it all ties together. It's
yeah. I mean, I think people get generally like they finish One Piece and then like as far as where to go next, they kind of get lost. And they sort of like end up sort of in like the anime fandom like morass of just like, I mean, there's a lot of fucking trash. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah. No, like the
Um,
discourse around it's bad, and I could see how like if you don't have anywhere like that's like the peak of your reading or something, and there's like you don't see anything else, you just kind of sit there, and I could see how that would be like infantilizing also.
Yeah, I mean completely. And like the discourse around it then like reduces these people down. Like they don't like they will just sort of like turn it into a mystification and say that like everything is just sort of like he felt like it. There's not really like an intention to it. The only thing is that like you'll get people saying like show me the SBS where he said that. You know what I mean? Like these
Yeah,
people's
yeah,
like
yeah.
interpretive functions just totally like they reduce themselves, and
Atrophy.
it's really sad.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it's, I mean, One Piece is like so ridiculously ornate that it's like, it's kind of, it's so ornate that people don't believe it. Like they don't even have faith that it could be constructed, and it's really sad because it's all there in the text, right?
Yeah,
Um,
it's like also like people used to flex that you can flex about like, oh, like, yeah, you've read like, there's people who like have no interest in these things and they're like, I read real books or whatever, and it's like this is a 1,000 chapter like this is like on the level of like A Dream of Red Mansions, like in the classics of Chinese literature. Like, you can
yeah.
also like get into a lot of like Chinese and Japanese literature from One Piece, and that'll open your eyes to a whole other set of
Oh,
uh,
I can imagine,
novels.
Dream of Red Mansion, like the Four Gems or whatever it is, right? It's
Yeah,
Journey to the West, Romance of Three Kingdoms, and I forget
yeah,
Red Mansion. Then I forget the last one, but yeah, it's
and
there.
there's a lot of great Japanese literature too. Like,
He
um,
points directly to the sort of like oral storytelling very much in Wano.
yeah,
There's a lot of comments. I mean, there's a few SBSs that are like, "Oh, is this a reference to this like particular Rakugo story?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm so happy that Rakugo heads understood this pun."
yeah,
And it's really like singular little like one panel references, but it's like it's so dense that it's all there. I mean, I found the Christ Pelican metaphor last night reading Whole Cake Island, and it's like, I mean, it, that's in Paradiso. He's really pulling from everything. It's great. I mean, I know it exists before that, but you know what I mean.
yeah. Well, I mean, I want to wrap this up now because we've been talking
Sure.
about this for a while and we could go on forever. But yeah, in conclusion, if you like world historical literature, there's nothing in literature right now in the year 2023 which is even in competition for canonization against One Piece. One Piece will be remembered as like the defining work of literature of this time period, and you can get in on it right now and ride it out to its conclusion with the whole world.
I mean, it's going to be an
And
event when they find the One Piece, right? Like, this is how
it's
I've been trying to convince people is like, look, man, don't you want to like be there when they find the treasure after 30 years?
Yeah,
Like,
it's gonna be like one of the defining cultural moments of the whole world. Like, it's not even just like a
yeah,
Japanese thing or an American thing, but it's like you go anywhere, you go to fucking Europe, people are reading this. You go to Latin America, people are reading this. Like, people are reading this all over the world. Like, and it is that influential and important of a thing that it's like sales figures are like approaching Shakespeare. And this is for someone who's still alive. It's like unprecedented.
yeah. I mean, and you can get in now, and you can be there when the Pirate King gets executed. It's
We'll be there. We hope to see
yeah,
you there as well. Have a good one, everyone.
sure.
Thanks for chatting with me, Mage. Peace.
Yeah, of course. Bye bye.